into another dimension, a dimension of insight, a dimension of understanding. You are entering a place where reality collides with truth. There are no limits, there are no boundaries. This is OffPlanet Radio.
With Duncan O'Finioan, Miranda Kelly, and our guest for this show is John Stormm. It is December 8th, 2013 as we're recording this, and we're going to go into some history tonight. We're going to go into the background of one of the original MKUltra abductees, and I'll use that word because I think that's the word he uses as well. You're about to get a bit of history. You're also about to hear 3 generations of survivors, not super soldiers, but survivors of MKUltra projects, discuss their past, their present, and their future. And I just want to welcome everybody onto the call tonight.
It is going to be an amazing call. Storm and I go back, oh my God, how long, John? 40 years? 45 years?
Yeah. I'd say probably about the first times that I ever laid eyes on you, you were probably 11 or 12, if that.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, you were kind of tall, gangly, still had to grow into your shoulders, and I was pretty much about the same body type. I was just a few years beyond you as all. I think I got about 7 or 8 years on you. But, I come up through the Ultra program, well, literally from birth. Was inducted into it just after I was born. My mother gave me up for adoption, and I ended up in that damn hole in, it was in Rochester, and it was Rockefeller-funded eugenics and MKUltra. Originally, before that, it was part of the Manhattan Project.
Right.
Andy Perro in later years came through about the same grouping thing.
The other thing I would add, Randy, is that I think probably for the first time you've got a first generation, second generation, and a third generation.
And is Miranda here? Did I hear her?
I'm here.
Oh, good.
I think I'm here.
You're very quiet.
Well, the boys have a lot to talk about, I know.
Well, you can muscle in every once in a while. So we welcome John Stormm for the first time to OffPlanet Radio. John, your background goes back to the earliest days of the black budget programs. And I know you started earlier to kind of build your history. So let's begin with the point where you were taken into the program and what you remember about your earliest days and then forward.
Actually, I remember almost everything. I mean, there's places where they mess with your memory and stuff, what I used to call a chair. Mm-hmm. But I was born July 31st, the eve of Lunason, 1953. I come from what you'd call a weirding family. My grandma, great-grandma, my aunts, and all that, there are witches, Danaan witches. And they tend to pick people from a certain gene pool or try to get specific talents, but I don't think they understood that the family was practicing witches, and the only reason I ended up for adoption is because they never trained males in the craft. My grandma got me when I was about 18 months old, but as of July 31st, let's say as of August 1st, I was one of, not the first, but among the first of the children that were inducted into MKUltra. Before that, it was still in existence before then, even into the 40s, the latter part of World War II. But most of those were volunteers and men they picked out of the military and people that they just experimented on. Manhattan Project, Building 400 out of the University of Rochester Medical Center, That has a history going back into the 40s of them just taking people, and people had come into Strong Hospital in Rochester, and they come in for one thing and get injected with radioactive isotope and not told about it, and just to see what it would do to them. And then later on, when they got people like me and the children and that, they started things like microfracturing our bones, dislocating them. This would create a stronger, more denser bone. They were using needles and stuff to scar our brain stems. This would give us an eidetic or a photographic memory of sort. Mm-hmm. So I have a memory going all the way back almost to the day I was born.
You know how unusual that is for most people, and yet the more I talk to people who have abduction experiences, people who have been taken into projects, and people that I've interviewed UFO abductions as well, seem to have very early memories compared to the average person.
Yeah, they do that on purpose. Well, when they were trying to make super soldiers, that was their thing, but it wasn't something that they could do out of a cookie cutter. They had to have certain people. A lot of people they tried it with. Uh-huh. Certain people didn't survive certain things, or just weren't really cut for it, or something like that. I can't claim any credit for that. I just kind of the luck of the draw in the gene pool. Gene pool dealt me a couple aces before the Rockefellers got into me and start stacking the deck. And I think that's how I survived, and I think that's how I also broke with programming eventually. But the idea was, you just can't make a brute that you can send in and let them shoot us up. They wanted somebody that could think on their feet, that could strategize. Essentially, I was more like an assassin or hunter or seeker. It's kind of complicated. No one single thing, but you have to be kind of like a master of many things in order to take out people who are highly protected, who are used to commanding a lot of men or something themselves, to be able to hunt them down, get through their defenses, take them out, and in many cases make it look like an accident or natural causes. And then be able to get out, be survivable, so that you can, the more you survive, the more experience you got, the more you're worth sending in. I think after a while, they pretty much started leaning on what we call the throwaways, the one-time use. They get him, they fracture his psyche so that he's got more than one personality, and they can cue the other one to go do something. I remember Dr. George Estabrooks. He was from Colgate, Rochester.
Yes.
He was part of this program back then. He once bragged that to a congressional committee that he could hypnotize anyone in that room to not only go home and kill their own parents, but to eat them in a soup. And these were the monsters that conditioned us, or did the most they could to condition us. They use a lot of trauma type things. I know in Rochester, not far down the road from Building 400 and Strong Hospital, is the Strong Psych facility. It was like a small skyscraper of all psych patients. And a lot of the people that they worked on ended up as gibbering idiots in there, and we've seen them, so we kind of know that there is a fate worse than death. Dying isn't such a bad thing. If living means that you're going to be a gibbering idiot crying and screaming the rest of your life behind those walls. That fellow that did the Aurora killings, I can tell you right now, is going through the screaming time. Once they get them behind locked doors and that, the things that happen, you wouldn't even want to imagine. And that is the kind of thing that spurs people like us, like Duncan, like myself, and that, to do and excel at the things, because what we have to look forward to, you just have to try all the harder. You have to will all the stronger. That's the thing that pushes you to be what a lot of people would call a super soldier, to push yourself beyond those boundaries that you'd normally think would stop you. Now, in the course of making us intelligent, I remember everything I ever read. I remember almost everything, like a percentile of about 96% or higher of everything I've read or anything I've been taught. So it's there with me all the time. I have that information at my fingertips, and that made me a lot smarter than my handlers. After a while, it's kind of hard for a dummy to control somebody that can think them into a corner. I've often made the observation that Nietzsche once said that when you gaze into the abyss, sometimes the abyss gazes back at you.
Yeah, exactly.
So I studied my monster makers as much as they studied me, and during the course of things, I've even used some of the things that I've learned from them to help get me past blocks that they set upon me and things like that. Sleep teaching tapes I've made my own, and things that I found out that I had some kind of blockage from doing. I'd use the sleep teaching tapes, set some speakers under my pillows and set them low, so that your subconscious hears them, and play them over and over again for nights in a row, and until I could, quit smoking. I've learned Russian that way. I think I learned Japanese partially that way. So, I take the things that I learned from them and I'd use them myself.
I'm curious to know what your memories are of, first off, having your personality split. Was there one method that they use, or do they use, in your case, maybe a combination of methods?
I'd say there was a combination of methods. My first 18 months, I remember a lot of darkness and a lot of pain. I had just about every kind of disease known, childhood scarlet fever, German measles, all that. So I remember them keeping me in the dark a lot. You're afraid I'd go blind, and I'd get these really wicked, for years, nosebleeds just out of nowhere. My blood pressure would spike to really crazy numbers, 200 and something, over 100 and something, really crazy numbers. I remember even when I got back home, sometimes, back then doctors used to have to make house calls just to stop the nosebleeds. I had several strokes, but later on when MRIs came out, they were doing electroencephalograms back in the early days, and now they do MRIs, and we found out that some of the parts that are normally lighted up on people's brains, in my case, some of the, like sight and hearing and stuff is located, it lights up different parts of the brain, or in slightly different parts now. Still using a lot of it, or a larger portion than like 10 or 15%. But this was part of the conditioning. Now the fracturing was done by, they make you very high strung and brittle. You go, even when you get to go home, when I was with my grandma, it wasn't so bad. When I was with my stepfather and my mother, it was nuts, because he knew that he could threaten me with, we'll put you in an institution, they have an institution for you, and that was MKUltra, and I knew exactly what that was. And if you don't get straight A's, that's going to be, so I had a lot of stress on me. Well, I had three beautiful sisters and a very pretty mother that most people used to keep mistaking for my sister. And he'd say, when I leave the house and you go out anywhere with them, you go with them, and if anything happens to them, don't you dare come home alive. And back then, I didn't think that was too much to ask. The old Western, you're in the middle of the house now, that kind of thing. But I was a dead man, in that neighborhood sometimes. And basically, it was my deal to get between them and whoever their attackers were, and, tell them to run like hell and me to deal with it. And you just find a way to deal with it. My bones don't break very easily at all. I could take a hit 40 miles an hour from a car and screw up the car. And I'm not walking away from that with a limp. I know it sounds incredible, but even in martial arts, we've been trained to smash through bricks and stuff without breaking our bones. You break the bricks, not the bones. Well, the rest of the bones in my body has had the same kind of treatment. Most of it was done with kind of like an electric, I want to call it a jackhammer, but maybe a little more refined than that. Kind of shiny stainless steel with a hard rubber nose on it, you know, and the bones microfractured, split all the way up and down, everything. And, you know, as it heals over, Wolf's Law takes over, and all that calcium, I have a tremendous thing for calcium, dairy products all the time, just craving for it all the time because the bones just absorb that stuff. So between the pains from the treatments, the conditioning, they also used to use electrical shocks, not on the brain. They kept that away from my brain because I had a very marvelous brain. It was always in the top 1% of any school that I went into. Mm-hmm. They used to bring me around as a boy and take me to the, you know, local masons and the pillars of the community and kind of parade me about, had free scholarships and all of that kind of stuff. I was a bit of a prodigy, but they'd do them across the muscles. They'd make these like wet felt pads with rubber straps across the different muscle groups, and they charge large pulses of electricity through them to make them spaz. And this would go on for hours on end. I think the little exerciser things that they sell now were designed off of those, but it was a lot higher voltage and current back then.
Right.
And yeah. Right, this would cause your whole body to just tighten up. I mean, really hard, like wood. Your biceps and that would feel like they were carved out of mahogany. And you know the electricity, you know, the pain and that. Well, you'd have to deal with it, but it'd make your muscles stronger and denser as if you were weightlifting. You know, with every muscle in your body back then. So, you know, the bones were very strong, the muscles were very strong, though I was still a skinny kid. I remember when I was training Duncan, I had the martial arts training, and when I wouldn't go out on certain missions or certain things that I had objections to, they couldn't control me so much like they do with him and others with the chips and stuff. They had to kind of coerce me or deceive me into it, and well, sometimes it wasn't much of a deception. It was like, yes, these were really bad people, and they really needed, you know, the world would be a better place without them, and I didn't have a problem with that.
Right.
But there were some times when I did have problems with what they were saying and what they were doing, and they'd say, well, okay, we got to get our money out of you, or basically you end up with the throwaways. They experiment something that they're pretty sure you're not going to live through and just see how far they can take it with you. And you end up one of those gibbering idiots in the yaya house. So I remember training Duncan when he was little. Now, try to picture, there was a group of really gangly-looking kids, and these are all ultras. And I'm trying to remember what military base we were on. It was a school, or it used to be a school before we were using it. Had a gymnasium. I was doing some of the martial arts classes in there. And I remember at one point, there was a fella, they used to call him Wild Bill. He was a spook. Wild Bill Donovan.
Oh, yes, I've heard of Wild. Yes, we've heard of Wild Bill. Yeah, this guy. Yeah.
He had bragged to some Army brass that, you know, what we were and what we could do. And they made it a point. They come down just as a demonstration. It was teaching martial arts. I'm sure Duncan was there. This would probably be one of those summers he thought he was with an uncle and then went home with what looked like leopard spots or bruises on his arms and legs. That was from these jackasses, colonels, brass hats, using golf clubs and smacking balls. They had a bucket of balls, and they were smacking it, and we'd either parry them, dodge them, knock them aside until we got pissed enough and start actually throwing them back. We got in a little bit of trouble for that, but
I remember that.
Because they were raising these guys to be warriors, not punching bags. So, you know, we got away with it in that, but they ended up sending a couple of their rangers down to say, okay, these kids are good practicing with other kids, but how do they do against a full-grown man? So we had to deal with these, you know, like I say, Duncan was probably 11 or 12. So picture this kid, he was tall for his age, kind of skinny. he had wide shoulders, but they weren't beefy or anything yet. Like, he still had to grow in them. He looked like gangly as a hound dog. And this was just outside the school. There's a little side yard, and we were going to play football. Just, this was a break. This wasn't our actual training in that. But we had these rangers and stuff with us. And they said, okay, we'll split up into teams. And they, in fairness, they didn't play them against us, or at least what they thought was fairness anyway. It was some of us. I mean, Duncan was on the other team. And I was on another team. We each had a couple big guys. These guys are beefy-looking linebackers, and they're kind of gangly kids. And I say, well, is it going to be touch or tackle? And just about all the ultra kids, Duncan, it's tackle. And the Rangers are looking at us like we got to be crazy that we want to play tackle against these big, beefy guys. Well, there's some things they didn't know, and there were some things we didn't know. For one, I didn't know it was against the rules to go ahead and throw myself horizontally at a couple linebackers' legs, to take out a couple at a time rather than, I guess that's not a legal move.
Right.
They complained about a lot of our moves in that, but they found out that, they ended up, by the time that game was over, I remember it was like about 20-some odd degrees. The ground was hard. The grass was like crispy. It wasn't snowing or anything. It was cold where we were. But there was a broken leg and a broken arm between the Rangers and all the ultra kids. Well, we were a little bruised up, but we were only bruised up, and we got far worse than that from a lot of our other conditioning back at the time.
Hey, John,
go ahead, Duncan.
Question about that location. Did that place have a chain link fence around it and a parking lot behind the chain link fence?
Yeah. Okay. Off the one corner, there was a brick building that attached to the school. That was where the boilers and the incinerators was. Big parking lot. It was about it was better than 6 foot. It was probably a 7 or 8 foot chain link fence.
Yeah, it was a very high fence.
Yeah, and it was like a red brick and type school. It even had a bell tower for an old school bell. It was an older school. And some of the rooms still had classrooms in that. I even taught some stuff in there, but they didn't like me sharing the more esoteric stuff or that. Some of the strategy, because some of the martial arts that I taught, we had to talk about precepts. We had to talk about strategies and stuff like that. It wasn't just stuff you did in the gym, and you didn't want the distractions of it. And sometimes I'd need the charts or stuff like that on the walls to show different pressure points and stuff, and to kind of talk out strategies and how certain things work. Because it wasn't just good enough to know, well, you move your hand like that and you hit here. You had to understand why so that you could ascertain for yourself on the job, in the field, what this tool was good for, how you could utilize this best to get in. Because the type of martial arts I taught was not the kind of stuff that you get in your local YMCA. I mean, you might learn a couple of the techniques there, but most of the techniques I taught were essentially, I learned the full boat, but I found out that when you're in the field, some of those things do not serve you well. They're extraneous. You don't want that crap on your mind. You want the stuff that works. Hollywood, you knock out the guards. In reality, you don't ever knock out the guards because
you take the guard out.
There's no guarantee how long they're going to stay unconscious and then get up and throw you a party before you're on your way out of wherever it is you're going into. You kill them, you break their necks, whatever. A lot of times I taught, and I used it a lot in Cambodia. I'd snap their neck and then twist their head around the other way so that their windpipe would close. So, some people, you can break their neck and they'll live, they'll survive. They're not exactly going to, they'll be a paraplegic, but they'll still be alive enough to talk to somebody. to tell them you were there, who you were, or what you were, or anything like that. But if you turn their head around, well, their windpipe closed, and it's like there's no way they survive that. And, of course, when their compatriots find them like that, well, it kind of horrifies them and scares them, and it makes them edgy, and it makes them make mistakes, which is all someone like us needs to get through and just kind of capitalize on that. And,
it definitely was a calling card.
I left a lot of those in Mexico. I found out later on they were using them too after a while. The cartels went against each other, but it was kind of funny because back then the idea was what we called a happy accident or plausible deniability. They'd send the cleanup squads in, and essentially they'd pay off whoever, they'd make it sound like it was a rival gang or something rather than government groups or anything like that. Back then they called us black boys. We'd go in and you didn't even have tags on your underwear or your T-shirt in case your body got left behind that anybody could identify by. So, the government would disavow that you had anything to do with it. So as far as they were concerned, you were just some criminal type that, from a rival gang. And so after a while, the gangs start doing that to each other, It's kind of like, well, actually, we started that.
I'm kind of curious to know the organization of your training, especially in the early days. Was it taking place on bases, different locations, and were there groups of people? Were they male and female? What was the composition of the training that you were going through, John?
There were male and female. A lot of them were on bases or near bases or old bases or parts of bases that were unused. I remember, I remember at Fort Carson there was a spot way off on the reservation that is Fort Carson, way off in the southwestern corner. There was a few old buildings there that we only used for, clandestine stuff or stuff that's, it's kind of way out of sight. It's over kind of at the foot of the mountain. It's like, hundreds of acres, miles and miles of rolling hills, and it's nothing visible for a long way or able to be visible for a way because of the hills and stuff. It hides everything.
John, if I can butt in just one quick second. That is the location where Miranda and I first met this go around when they had on those rolling hills with the grass.
Yeah.
That is the place where we were together when she hit me with a shout that felt like Mike Tyson punched me in the back of the head.
I'll bet. I got flattened around down there a couple times myself. I used to, for a while there, back in the 70s, I used to collect coffee mugs from the different bases I was at, but after a while I couldn't keep up with keeping them all. Especially after I got out. There was a lot of travel back then. I did get to go to Japan and a number of other places to get certain specialized training. Some of the ninja tactics I learned were from Dr. Hatsumi Misaki. He's like the 34th Soki or Grandmaster of Tokogori Ninjutsu. So I've learned some stuff from him and the seminars and stuff, and I brought it back. And, people like Duncan and some others. And we've had even Deltas, Rangers, Recons, and stuff that were also in some of those classes to make the best of it. I remember at one point I was hoping to get them to let me fund a team where essentially my idea of an anti-terrorist group would be a group of ninjas, and it's like once somebody holds hostages, we ain't letting them live. The hostages will try to get out alive for sure, but the people that would be doing it was, and for a while I remember that was even rolling around in Congresses to, we can make them, they'll be scared to death, of us, because it's like this: once you take the hostage and you decide, you're ready, and they say, well, we're not going to bargain with them. This is dope. We'll kill them. We'll go in, It's a death sentence. They're holding people hostage, they're threatening their lives, they kill one or two, whatever, they're dead men. And I guarantee it. It's like, they considered it for a while, but they decided not to go with it. That was my idea of an anti-terrorist group.
Works better than what they got now.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I want is like, after that, would you want to be one of the fools that try to do it? It's kind of like, this is what you're going to get for your for your effort. You can make all the demands you want. Just got a quick grave.
How many people do you estimate, John, were part of the original group of abductees, inductees, whatever, in that initial MKUltra project? Do we ever actually get some kind of estimate? I know there's no hard number that you could.
It's got to be at least in the hundreds. And I have to wonder, I really have to wonder, because I know a lot of people didn't survive it, or let's say they didn't survive it as a whole person. When they go to try fracturing your psyche and putting you through all those things, some people, they break.
Yeah.
And they're like broken, they're no good, they can't live outside of an institution anymore. Like I said, there are some things worse than death, and I believe that's one of them. And then there's people that just outright died or were killed just to make an example. And these are children. These are like, it's why I get so vehement in that when I make my videos and stuff about that or testify about it. It's like, listen, there's no mistake. We're not talking about people that are just a little misled or something like that. We're talking about some evil SOBs. I'm trying to keep my language clean here, because I don't know what kind of time I got or what your listeners are, but
John, if I can cut you here for just one second.
Yeah.
I have several memories of those disposable/expendable children sort of it being used exactly how you described. And that's one of the worst parts for me, too, are those memories of the children that were never meant to be, brought up all the way through the projects and just used as examples to torture the rest of us.
I remember when I hit about 17, I figured if I joined the Navy, I'd be out of the ultras and I'd be into something regular, and they'd have to treat me like a normal human being. And I figured that would give me some slack. I figured I already had 2 years of electronics in high school that I aced and 2 years of photography that I aced. I figured I could be an electrician's mate or a photographer's mate, or I can work on radar or communications or something, and then have a regular job when I got out. This is what I was thinking when I signed up to go in, but what I got into was worse. And I remember seeing I got it worse than I was at home. It was hard to believe. I remember at one point they were injecting us with stuff, and I remember jumping out through the glass of the second floor window. And they're yelling, grab them, and it's like, no, I hit the ground. But nothing broke or anything like that. But I remember this fella. I still remember his name even. His name was Dave Miller. He was a kind of a joker, a guy who's even when he was standing at his attention, his eyes were smiling, that kind of fella. Happy-go-lucky kind of guy, tough as nails. But by the time I was finishing up my little tour there at where the hell was I? I think that was still at Great Lakes. He was like catatonic. He looked like a freaking zombie. Reminded me a bit of Jack Nicholson in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest there at the end.
Yes.
And that's what Dave looked like when they were done with him. And it's like this guy was going for UDT. I was in that group myself, so I remember him. It's kind of, I used to love this guy. I used to love joking with him and that. And he had a good, strong spirit. He could take anything and laugh at anything. And that's what it takes. That's what it takes. And then when I saw him with an SID guy and he's sitting there like a zombie, I'm going, Dave, and he's just looking like he don't recognize anything. And It's like, wow, that scared the crap out of me. That was like, you can bet I was a real good boy on a couple of missions after that. And it's like, you don't fail, you know, it's like, don't make a mistake. Don't even think about making a mistake. You do everything in your power to make sure everything goes the way you need it to go in order to get back alive and not let them do that to you. You know, and when you got that kind of impetus going on all the time, it's like, and no break from it, you know.
Failure was not an option in anything that we all did at no time.
No, because if we did, we wouldn't even be here talking.
No.
Or not in much condition to talk. You know, and then after that, around somewhere in that time, somewhere around 1960, you got this guy at like Texas A&M. This is the first time that I heard of anybody doing this, just getting up one morning and deciding to go out and shoot innocent people. He was part of that program. I can't remember what the hell his name was.
That would have been the Houston, the clock tower, the Austin.
Yeah.
Right.
And his name was Whitman.
Yeah.
Whitney.
Before that, I mean, you had people like Dillinger and stuff, and none of these guys, you know, John Wesley Harding, these were some murdering bastards. But they never just got up and just decided to start killing people. Nobody ever did that before then. That was a product of the MKUltra program. And after that, you'd start seeing that. A person would get up. He was a quiet man. And then he'd get up and he'd start shooting everybody at a Walmart or at a McDonald's or something like that. And it just, these were the throwaways. These were the people that Estabrooks bragged about. You know, he could make them go home and kill their parents and that. And you know, they'd have enough skills to actually shoot the gun and you know, they trained us to shoot too. Hell, I used to hear tales that Corso could shoot the nuts off a net at about 500 yards or something like that. But these guys are trained in just what they need to know and that much, and then, you know, to do this and then maybe take their own life afterwards or point the gun at a cop and commit suicide by cop. But they're made to use once and throw away. We were made to be survivable, but we also were somewhat problematic because they went through a lot of people making one of us, for one, and for two, it was hard holding on to us. When you got somebody that can think on their own or think super sharp, eventually they become a bit sharper than their handlers, and their handlers fail to be able to handle us.
I was told years ago by Lieutenant Colonel John Morrow, who's deceased now, who was one of the handlers in Project Talent back in the early 1970s. His father was Colonel John Morrow, who was the colonel over Wright-Patterson Air Force Base back in the 50s and 60s. And what he told me years ago is that for every one success of us there was at least 100 failures. Jeez.
I know that strong psych unit was filled with a lot of, I mean, you wonder where all these people come from, these sad, poor people would come from. You know, it was a big place. It had, you know, besides it had a bit of a skyscraper. I can't remember if it was 19, 20 stories high or what. You could see the lake from there, and that was on the southern part of Rochester or Henrietta area. And then there was all the low buildings around there for acres, and you know, where they'd house the people that were at least nominally with it. They used to also have a place up by Staten Island, on Staten Island. I can't remember the name of that place. And they used to send a lot of their people there too. They used to threaten me with that one. And you know, there'd be, it's just awful. I mean, these places, if you've seen one or walked in one, it's just like you don't ever want to end up there. You don't even want to go there to visit. It's just, it's traumatizing just seeing, and you know, we've got serious trauma before too. You know, they just break a lot of people. And, you know, it's like, somebody's got to answer for this. But that's why they started, that's why, what's his name, Richard Helms start destroying our files and stuff. That was around between 73 and 77. I remember the hearings were in 77. And it's kind of like, because it would have been a death sentence. The American public would have got the full shot of what the hell was going on. That American kids were taken and this done to, the things that they were doing to them, the ritual abuse, the sexual abuse, all the other things that they did to us to break us, and just some of us just toss us away or have one kill the others, or, and all that would be, it'd have been a death sentence several times over. It wouldn't be no, life imprisonment without parole, and I couldn't believe it back in 77. It was kind of a low point for me for a little while there. I kind of went a little berserk myself and went off on my own with a few things, but when they just got away with it, since there was no records as to exactly what we done, when they got them up on the to testify, well, I can't remember exactly what I did to them. I think some of it involved some drugs, and there was a little bit of ritual abuse or something like that involved, and it's kind of like, yeah, well, we can't tell. And I mean, there was all the people that testified and said this happened, that happened, so on and so forth. And it was like, now it wasn't like they were making outrageous claims, because they already knew about the same people, especially in the outfit I was in, where they were injecting them with plutonium and all this other kind of stuff just to see what it would do. It's kind of like, it wasn't like it was, you murdered these people. You killed them slow. You kept it from them. Their relatives wouldn't even know if it wasn't for the Freedom of Information Act 30 years down the line, when the people that did it were already dead. And then guys like Gottlieb and Esther Brooks and these guys just go. They didn't even slap their wrists, didn't shut down none of their offices for more time than it took them to make their testimony and go home. Nobody answered for anything.
And let's not forget either, John, they had us play war games with each other for real. I mean, it was for kids.
Oh, yeah.
The movie out there, the Hunger Games, dude, man, they had us do that for freaking real. Yeah. And we were 11, 12, sometimes younger, playing war games, and it was kill or be killed. So they were pitting kids against kids, trying to get the best.
Well, they were doing it for a long while, even with I remember even doing it with BB guns. In fact, there was one thing. Well, we didn't have paintball back then, but I remember one of these Rangers had a BB gun. I remember it had 17 shots. I counted. It was like a CO2 pistol, and he would stand on one side of the yard, and I'd stand on the other. And he'd go, he'd just start shooting at me. And the purpose of this was me to not be hit, to get across the yard, snatch the gun from his hand without getting hit. You get a big ass welt on you if it nailed you, Oh, yeah. I remember we had goggles, but we had we had a lot of that. We did have BB gun wars, but there were live round type things after that. There'd be like special shows for some of those brass hats. It got to where, man, I hated brass hats. There were so many officers that I personally wanted to kill. And I mean, they would have deserved it. They'd have to deserve it if I wanted to kill them. It's like, I wouldn't waste anybody unless I knew they were a murdering bastard. And like I said, these are American kids. It's not like, not that I disregard Muslim kids or anybody else's kids. I imagine, I know the Russians love their kids too, but this is a country where we talk about all this, human rights and freedom and liberty, and I don't know a goddamn soul in the whole country who's actually got some of that. We're talking, well, we're bringing freedom to Iraq. Well, Jesus, when are we going to get some first? So we can take some over, or are we importing it from the Chinese and delivering it to them? It's crazy. It's insane. And you try to tell people this, and it's like, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. It's like, is it? Why don't you go fishing without asking somebody for permission or paying for the privilege first? Why don't you go drive a car without asking somebody for permission first or paying taxes to do it. I mean, the country went into a revolution for less than what you're doing now. That you want to get married? Well, you're going to have to ask somebody permission first. Tell me what's free about this country, and how are we bringing any of that to anybody else? They talk about America, the colors that don't run. It's kind of, don't run? No, it doesn't have to. It's sitting in a box in Langley, operating a joystick, killing people in another country we ain't even at war with, technically, because they look like they're suspected terrorists. It's not like convicted terrorists or anything like that. They're suspected terrorists. They think they don't like Americans. Okay, so they go and kill them in their country, then they double tap them while they're at home with dinner with their wife and their kids. And well, the kids are just collateral damage because we suspect Daddy might not like America. And then when the neighbors come to try to rescue whoever they can, see if there's any survivors, we double tap them and get them too. This is the country the colors don't run. Roger Waters called it the bravery of being out of range.
Yes.
We were the most surgical strikes this country ever had. That we went in, we got who we were sent in to get. Whether they were drug lords or warlords, no matter how well protected they were, we had a nearly 100% chance, or a 100% record, nearly. I missed a couple, but I believe I was sold out at the time. That was when George H.W. was head of the CIA, and they knew we were coming in from where. They were selling assets even back then. I knew that man was evil as hell.
That's one of the things, John, that you said that is so dead on. We didn't believe in collateral damage.
No.
That was
it was unacceptable. It was unacceptable. It was like, I go in, and a lot of times, I've been in where I could just go in and shoot somebody or something like that. But a lot of times I had to go in and I had to tread lightly. I remember a couple drug lords, in a hotel up on the mezzanine, snap their neck, toss them down the stairs real quick, and just continue on. And it's like nobody's looking for anybody who murdered them. It's what they call George Bush's CIA of the time used to call it a happy accident. He was found at the foot of the stairs with a broken neck. Nobody's sending off the alarm. Nobody's pointing fingers at the diplomats or anybody. Nobody's looking for a murderer. It's natural causes, He had a fractured skull, slipped in his bathroom or something like that, or found in a car crash, or, any of a number of things. But you got the person you went in for, and the government always had its plausible deniability.
Yep.
Now, we're talking about an America post-World War II, the America that basically begins with the National Security Act / National Security State. And would you see that, plus the fact that we had Operation Paperclip and other imports of Nazi intelligence, Nazi science, Nazi military coming into the United States as assets, would you see that as really the seed by which all these programs were sprung?
They were good. I think they were. I think they were spun even before then, because I remember people like who was it, Vannevar Bush or somebody used to support the Nazis back in the 30s and that. So there was some of that already here. But after that, I got to tell you, for the longest time, when I was a little boy, just from all my doctors talking among themselves, I used to speak German with a Bavarian accent. Just from listening to them, a lot of the technical terms get so wild. They get these really long words to describe something. But I learned how to understand them and how to learn to speak the language back then. But there were so many krauts in there, and they were still speaking German among themselves. So, and I also noticed that most of the local Masons and stuff that they used to parade me around to, picture me, I'm blonde hair, blue eyed. I was little back then. When I was about 12, I was about 6 foot tall. But I was also a music prodigy, straight A's, all the time straight A's. And they'd take me and I'd get these scholarships and I'd meet all these people, and there was more German names than you could swing a stick out of most of them. Mm-hmm. And a lot of this stuff was like that superior race type stuff. I was educated in a public school, at Rochester Public School number 14. I was a standard bearer because I had the highest GPA in the school. And then when I moved over to 27 school, I had the highest GPA there. And it just kind of kept going. And, everywhere I went, and it was like no matter what school, I didn't have to have the best school. I could still outshine on SATs and that people that went to like frickin' Princeton. But, and I was in a public school. This is the superior man. And it's like, I wasn't swallowing that, because they were afraid of me and I could feel it. And it's like, yes, we are the superior man. Well, I might be, but you're not. And it doesn't have anything to do with our race, because for, nearly the same thing is just, and I knew black men I thought that were better than them by magnitudes, It's like I always wondered, if you took a black guy, a really nice athletic black guy, and did to him what you did to me, I wonder how much better he might be. But they damn well never would do something like that.
So basically they were following the blueprint of the Aryan race that we saw emerge out of Germany, the Nazi paradigm. I think so. It was Rockefeller eugenics probably did the most funding for my particular thing here. Andy Perel also came from this same institution here in Rochester, New York. Yeah, from the same. He's years later than me, the Project Superman and that, but it's all funded by the same group. Rockefeller eugenics probably pumped the most money into it, and they were big into that.
I can toss this in there right quick concerning Andy. It wasn't too long after Andy's ordeal that the market was flooded with all these new sports enhancement drinks that were just borderline steroids. We used to call them legalized steroids that you can go to GNC and pick up for $89 that might do you 3 days, that all these bodybuilders and whatnot now are using. I think a lot of those supplements came out of Andy's project.
Yeah. Well, even before that, because I used to have this really rampant high blood pressure. It'd go absolutely nuts. It would just ramp me right up. But that core body strength and everything, I'd start getting nosebleeds after a while, but it was like, it was like unstoppable as, ephedrine and stuff like that was in a lot of the cocktails that they gave us. And that was dangerous stuff. They'd get your heart racing like anything, but my heart was particularly strong and, skeletal and muscular.
I used to get the massive nosebleeds when I was young as well.
Oh, me too, all the time. They would always try to send me home from school because I'd be gushing blood out my nose. Yep.
That's part of the treatments that they gave us, and it's kind of like if it didn't break your heart, it gave you a particularly strong heart.
Yeah.
But a lot of people never survived that part. Either stroke, CVA. I've had a couple strokes, but I managed to pull through. I could heal in a couple of weeks. Well, the strokes took longer to get by, or at least the bad ones did. Took me some months to get through. But I remember at one point I had a heart murmur. I blew a valve. Within a year, I grew another valve. My doctors tell me, well, we either can get a artificial valve or a pig valve or a horse valve or something like that. And, within a year, I says, well, I'll get a checkup and listening to my heart. I says, how's the heart murmur? And he says, there isn't one. And I says, well, we just did an ultrasound, last year and did a video of it. And this is the thing was all torn to hell. He says, well, let's do another one. And there was a brand new valve there. All those flats just working just perfectly as anything. And It's like if it doesn't kill us and if we live long enough, I mean, it's not like Wolverine where you heal within seconds or anything, but if it doesn't kill us outright and we live long enough, we'll heal through just about anything.
No, that's right. That is something that all of us that come out of these projects, we have is that tremendous recuperative abilities, healing abilities, and whatnot. As a quick example, we were in Minnesota a couple of months ago.
Mm-hmm.
I had a massive third-degree burn on my right hand. I mean, the blisters, the yellow pus, within seconds. The next day it was gone. You couldn't even tell where it had been.
Well, it started fading almost instantly because I was looking at it.
I can stop bleeding almost instantly. That's part of the martial control, the mastery there, shutting down one area and stuff like that. The bleeding can stop quick. I took a couple days, couple weeks. I've been shot, that I've been hit 6 times. However, if we took all the bullets that were ever shot at me and put them in a big burlap sack, most people would hurt themselves trying to lift it.
What?
But
what? Dan, you've got me. I've only been hit 3 times. Damn it.
Well, a couple of them I thought were just stupid mistakes, or but the hard bones tend to stop. Most of them are causing to glance. The one I got hit in the back, and it kind of hit the top of my pelvis and just went up into the muscle in my lower back. And I mean, that was like 4 stitches, 2 on the outside, 2 on the inside. It hit in the head twice, but they were mostly glancing blows. One took out some granite on the wall, and I was looking around. That sucker was trying to take my head off, and he was pretty good, but it just didn't do nothing but give me a headache, and he didn't survive it anyway.
That sounds like a 223. It
was pretty nasty. Yeah, I got a little scar on the one side there, and it's a little raggedy looking. And it's like the bullet glanced off, but the chips of the granite kind of tore it up a little bit. But the scar tissue isn't that bad. I mean, you can see it. It's a little rough there, but it's nothing really obscene or really ugly. Laura always used to tell me I had a lot of sexy scars. I was shot once in the hip. I think that was a 38 or something. I pulled that slug out with my fingers because the bone is like right there. It still hurts when it gets cold and damp. Once in the shin. I got hit in the chest with that was mostly birdshot and rock shot. I almost don't want to even count that because he was just far enough away where he knocked me on my ass. I mean, knocked the wind out of me, but it really doesn't stop us. Nothing actually hit any organs or anything dangerous, at least not for me. I never spent more than a couple hours in the infirmary either getting stitched up or stitching up myself, depending on what the situation was at the time.
It's been suggested here by the female member of our team tonight that we take a break here, and it's actually a good time to do it.
Randy.
We'll cut this part out of the show. Sure we will. Everybody knows. It's okay. It'd actually be a good place to terminate because that'll give us a 1-hour file. And we can come back, and I got a few more questions. And everybody just stay on the line and go do whatever you're going to do. Take a wiki leak or get a cup of coffee. Or
I got some coffee ready. So
I just didn't want to miss like 1 second of this. Otherwise, I would have just snuck out. But
always polite she is. Okay.
I got pee.
This is OffPlanet Radio.
This is the second segment of our interview with John Stormm. On the call with me, Duncan O'Finioan, Miranda Kelly, and our guest, John Stormm.
I remember one of the first magic lessons that I ever got from Stormm, and it was how to use glamour to make someone make yourself or your voice or something around the other person appear to be what it really is and make it appear to be what you put in them. At the first Awake and Aware conference that Kerry Cassidy put on, Miranda and I were there, and I got bumped from my flight. And Randy, when we do these things, we're not a shoestring budget. We're a cat's hair budget. So
yeah.
We didn't really have the money to go back to that same hotel and pay for 2 more nights. So we went back, and we got the connoisseur, the guy comes up behind the desk, and I start working the spell that John had taught me back when I was maybe 11, 12 years old. Mm-hmm. And I'm putting in his brain, charge to Camelot. And he's like, sir, I can't do that. I said, charge to Camelot. He said, yes, sir, I can charge this to Camelot. So he charged another night to Kerry Cassidy. We got down the hallway to the elevator, and we heard, what the hell did I do?
It was great because he thought it was his idea. He was like, actually what I'm going to go ahead and do is just charge it to Camelot. And we were like, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
But that's
also called dominating.
Yeah.
And that is among the illuminists, the elitists, that is the one trait, the royals and all that. That is their genetic, what they call their mandate to rule. The fact that they can dominate. That's how, we don't have kings. Our politicians seem to think they're kings and nobles, but they're not. But they do come descended from those lines. You'll find that every one of those presidents is related to the Queen of England and or some royal somewhere. But that's how they can get up and lie to people. And get caught all year long in one scandal after another and one lie after another, and then they'll stand up behind that podium and say something, and everybody will listen to it like it was freaking gospel. Like, you didn't lie to us. And that's that domination. That's that ability to, to influence, to cause people. Now that can be twisted a whole number of ways. Anything you feel. When we were kids, it was part of our clan teaching even. We called it the itch. And we'd imagine an itch. In fact, I've done it with some of you, even during our martial classes and classes on ninjutsu and stuff like that, where you'd imagine, we got some quiet time and, we got to be sitting there waiting in a waiting room or something like that. You'd imagine an itch on the right side of your nose. But you don't scratch it. You transfer it to the other guy. You keep quiet about it. When he reaches up and scratches it, you either have it written down, or you got him, or you just practicing without keeping count with anybody. But against each other, we used to just write them down. Right side of the nose. When they reach up, gotcha. If you feel fear, you're in a situation now. Everybody feels fear. The difference between a hero and a craven coward is both of us are terrified. It's just the hero's going to act in spite of it. The coward's going to be paralyzed because of it. But you can also transfer that to your enemy. I've been in really bad neighborhoods where, a bunch of punks would be hanging out looking for trouble, and that, as I'm walking up the street, here's a single guy walking up, let's see if we mess with him. But as I get closer, they start feeling the fear. And they start figuring, they'll rationalize it. They feel it. He's probably packing. Maybe he's a cop, or he's got some tough friends nearby because this guy doesn't look scared. So, and then they leave you well enough alone. And there's just all kinds of ways you can use this. Laura used to call it these aren't the droids you're looking for Jedi trick.
Nice.
But it works the same way. It's just you will it, you hold it in your mind, it's strong, you force it, you dominate it. Now, and some people you'll find got this trait. They're like the best used car salesman or vacuum cleaner salesman in the world. The thing is after they leave, you wonder, what the hell was I thinking? You're in full agreement all the while they're there, but once they get past a certain range or they turn it off, you kind of got your own mind again. And so, I mean, there's a lot of people that got that trait, but that's one of those traits from the ancient weirding clans that the royals, the Illuminati families, and stuff like that, all them got. But besides those 13 families, there was 187 more weirding families that either got wiped out or put down or just scattered, where they weren't learning their craft anymore or that, but they still got some of those traits. That's why all those royals keep inbreeding with each other, trying to get one that has more watcher traits than the rest to be able to rule the world better, you know, with a pure sect. You know, they get a lot of monsters and goofballs out of them, but they keep trying.
Well, I think the last one that they got that was worth a damn was Cecil. Cecil Rothschild was probably the last one they got.
Yeah, they got more. They still got people that are still influencing things in big ways, and that they're still utilizing the trait. You know, like I say, a lot of us have got them. You know, we could, you know, when you draw somebody's attention to something to make it look like it's worth more than it is, it's called a glamour. When you try to turn people's eyes away from it, it's called a ward. Make them take another way, and then, you know, but the whole act of pushing that at them, you know, with your mind and or your spirit is domination, and it's a lot easier for people with really strong spirits. And it's like this: if we didn't have the spirits that we have, as strong as they are, we probably wouldn't have survived either. We'd probably be gibbering idiots, and the things that kept us alive also were the things that made it harder for them to keep under their thumb.
Yeah, and it's also, correct me if I'm wrong, it's also being able to ward it that way is also the first step in invisibility. You don't actually go invisible, you make people just not see.
Make them look somewhere else. And I used to couple this, we had what we called the disappearing marble trick, where you keep a little glass marble in there, and if you the more points of contention that you can give them, it was like the structure of a lie. I remember my master taught me a thing about lies, and he taught me about lies so that he'd make me understand about deception and how to use deception. My lesson took place when I was about 14 years old, and he says to me one day, I come over for my martial arts lessons, but we used to do a lot of other things besides. And he says, tomorrow, he says, I want you to promise me you're going to fast from sundown tonight till sundown tomorrow. No matter what I say or what I do, tomorrow you will not eat or drink anything until after the sun goes down. You got that? And I says, okay. He says, which is honor? I said, okay, which is honor? Which means under no circumstances am I ever going to break my will or word. And I figured this was just a test. And I figured sundown to sundown, that's not too bad to put up with being hungry or thirsty. So, you know, the next day I come home from school, and of course I haven't eaten or drank anything all that day, and he's making oatmeal and got some coffee in that. He's got butter and brown sugar and, you know, heavy cream and stuff on it, and this stuff is like delicious. High fiber and lots of calories, and it's great stuff when you're training. And I love the stuff. And he says, you look like you can really use this before the lesson. So he fills it up, and I figure, yeah, you're just messing with me because you want me to, I think he's testing my willpower, but it was more than that. And so he sets a bowl for both of us, sitting at the kitchen table, and a lot of times we used to start out our training session at the kitchen table and have coffee or something and talk about what we were going to do or what we were hoping to accomplish. And I just sat there playing with mine. I wasn't going to eat. The sun was still up. Still had hours before that thing went down, so I was just playing with it. I'm not going to eat it. And figuring he's testing me that way. And as I'm, he says, well, why don't you go ahead and eat it? I'll let you off. You're off your word. You don't have to. You just go ahead and eat your oatmeal. And I'm sitting there playing with it. I says, no, I don't need to. And I'm sitting there, and as I'm stirring the oatmeal, just messing around, I got the spoon in it and that, I smell the bitter almonds coming from the bottom. And I look down, there's kind of like a dark brown stain. And some weeks before, we had went to the cherry tree in the backyard. He was showing me how to make cyanide for, like, arrows and darts and stuff. And I remember the smell, the cyanide smelled like bitter almonds. And he had put some of that in the bottom of my oatmeal bowl. And he's telling me, well, this stuff is good for you. It's got milk for calcium, and it's got butter, and it's got the oatmeal's for fiber. It's got iron and all this other kind of stuff. It's good for you. And I remember, and I smelled it, and I says, this stuff's got cyanide in it. He says, yeah, very good. And I says, but you lied to me. He says, no, I didn't. I said, yes, you did. You said this oatmeal was good for me. He says, yes, I told you the milk was good for you, the oatmeal was good for you, the butter was good for you, all it was good for you. But there's cyanide in it. He says, I didn't say anything about the cyanide. I just told you about the other stuff, and it is good for you. Well, the cyanide will kill me. He says, well, yeah, that's true, too. Now you know something about a lie or deception. The more truth that you have to add to it, the more believable the deception is. The more reality. See, you're not affecting. You're affecting people's perception of reality. You're not affecting reality. You're affecting the perception of reality, and this is the whole thing. This is the whole thing behind wizardry and stuff, even for warlocks and that. So in the course of using our disappearing marble, well, we would cast that impression. We give them that impression. They want to be looking, or they're suspicious of something. Maybe they saw a shadow moving out of the corner of their eye in a direction away from us. But if you added the sound of a marble, which they couldn't see very well, but it would make a little clattering and added a little sound to it, this made this an absolute certainty that there was something over there and not where we were. And they just buy into it so bad. These people would be like putty in our hands when we went in there. It was like the difference between a master and a black belt, the difference between somebody like Muhammad Ali and another boxer. They say he'd psych you before you got in there. And I remember even my master, and I even told you guys when we start sparring, if you think the other guy can beat you, if you go into the ring thinking the other guy can beat you, the match itself is nothing but a formality. You're going to lose. If you go in thinking, yes, he's better than me, but I just might beat him, or I might find something, now you stand a chance of winning. Now the match is actually doing something. A real master strikes him, beats him before he even gets in the ring. He has that match won. And the way that we trained was such so that when we went into some place like that or anything, we utilized everything around us, everything around them to make them believe what we wanted. It's a common dogma around the sheeple. This is how their masters control them. They have little sayings like, what you don't know can't hurt you. And what I taught and what every wizard or mage ever learns is what you don't know is precisely what hurts you. It'll kill you. To the warlocks and wizards of Wall Street and Madison Avenue, image is everything. But to a true wizard or a master, you understand the image is very few things are exactly what they appear to be at first glance. These are the people that live through these things. The people that think, well, what you don't know can't hurt you. They just bought into it, and it costs them their life. They think that, they hear something, they think, well, it's just a mystery, they don't go look or they don't understand, they won't look into it. That's the kind of mind that gets taken and captured by somebody like us or somebody like their masters, the illuminists and that control them. They just run them like cattle to the slaughter, with that kind of thinking. And we're kind of trained to take that, jump on it. We're like the predator's predator. We don't take nothing for granted. We don't go in and play those games like that. We stack the deck always, the odds are with the house. The odds are with our house.
I'll add this too, real quick, where John mentioned where he said witch's honor. That is the same as Miranda and I saying, we swear something on our power. Mm-hmm. It's different than somebody normal swearing an oath and breaking it, where the consequences may come out as karma somewhere down the road or whatnot. With us, it's instant with us. If we swear on our power, or it's a witch's swear or whatnot, it's instant if we break it. And we lose. Yeah. It's painful. We lose right there.
Yeah. Yeah, witch's power is in their unbroken will and word. And, you really got to have an unbroken will to have an unbroken word anyway. And, your word has to be like it's ironbound. And there's reasons for that as a practitioner of magic or someone who deals with all kinds of powers, visible and invisible. When you say something, it can be counted on, taken to the bank. The warlock will have you believe it. He's kind of like, my image of a warlock is not somebody in a long robe and I picture him in an Armani suit with his fingers crossed behind his back. He will deceive. He will. His word isn't worth much of anything. It's always worded in such a way as to deceive. Well, what I actually meant was this. It's like when a witch says it has to be, if you say you're going to visit your friends in Ireland and none of the planes are running and none of the boats are running, the best thing you can do is die trying to swim there. You do everything in your power to keep your word. And still among a lot of the various Celtic towns and stuff, in Ireland, Wales, Scotland, you'll still find a lot of people, and this isn't Christianity, this is a holdover from the old pagan ways, that are larger than life for the amount or the distance they will go to keep their word about something. That's from the old days. That was your advertising. If you were good and people said you were good and you delivered what you said you were going to deliver each time, they'd come to you. That was your advertising back before people put up ads that could say anything.
That's why giving your word is so... Yeah, and it's why giving your word is so sacred, and why the old etiquette plainly states, give your word sparingly.
Yes.
Because giving your word could cost you your life. We've been there, done that.
Yeah.
John, can we talk?
A lot of times I'll say I'll give it my best shot, or I'll do it, or I'll do my best, which means hey, if I can't succeed in pulling it off, I'm going to do my very best I can to do it. And it's very careful about how I word my word or use my word, but you'll find out politicians use those lavishly. That's their currency, They just spend it lavishly because they don't have to pay on it. It's kind of like the money, Back when I was a kid, silver certificates, gold certificates, a dollar bill or whatever bill that was worth its current value in gold or silver. Now it's just a note. It's just an IOU. It's based on their word, and it's called fiat currency. And that's an interesting term because, the warlocks always used Latin. That was a trade language for doing business between the money changers and all that. Well, also scholars as well that would also do business that way. But it was a trade language. And the currency are called fiat currency. And fiat means basically on my word, or because I say so, or as my word, I know it be if you're a wicked. That's what it means. But their word is worth nothing. It's just a little paper talisman with occult symbols that carries a lot of, or people think carries a lot of weight. But when the reality of it hits, the dollar's going to fall like crap. And everybody's expecting it, and it's kind of like, duh, it's monopoly money. Who's running that show? The Fed. And who's the Fed? Well, it's the 13th most richest families in the world.
Can we talk a little bit, John, about how you were initiated into occult practices? Did this begin when you were young? Is it part of your heritage, your tradition, your background? How did you get initiated into occult practices, and what were some of those practices?
Well, I was born into a family that is long-standing practicing Danaan witches. We count our ancestry back about 13 centuries, but obviously it goes back a lot further than that. That was the Celtic infrastructure at one time for Celtic society for thousands of years before Christianity ever rose. But a lot of occult practices were those being used by those Nazi doctors and stuff for MKUltra and that. At about 18 months is when my grandma came to get me. And she was a practitioner. Her mother was our clan matriarch. Well, she became the matriarch at that point because her mother died the day I was born. She was an adept. An adept with us is a witch that can do almost on a whim what would normally take a whole group to do. They're very talented. They got a lot of genetic traits in spades. Just about any witch has at least some traits because that's where they get their interest to even start looking in these directions for power and the ability to do things or to have some effect on their environment, how to change things. So when she got me home, well, she learned that I was adept too. So she decided, well, okay, if she would have left me with those nuns and stuff there back with MKUltra, she didn't know about MKUltra so much as the nuns and stuff. But she figured, well, they treat me as a demon-possessed or crazy man when shit starts happening around me and that. So she decided to train me up in the craft and, make me responsible for it. And gave me a lot of love and taught me the family craft as far back as it goes. Raised me on a lot of old books, a lot of old grimoires that's been in the family for ages. Plus, her and Grandpa used to buy me encyclopedias of all kinds of old books at the old rummage sales and stuff, and kept me learning. And of course, she'd spend the time to teach me medicine, herbs, and all kinds of stuff. That was a part of our lifestyle and trade and craft and trade, or whatever you want to call it. So I actually learned almost from birth. We still on?
Hello? You still there, John?
Oh, okay, yeah.
It looks...
Who's here?
Duncan, Miranda, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
It's echoing a little bit.
Something ripped out. Okay, we're good. Keep going, John.
Yeah, well, essentially I learned from literally from a baby. And just kind of come up in it. My grandma was the matriarch of our clan. My aunts didn't like it that a male was being trained, but I was really, really talented. Legend or family history has it that every third generation produces an adept witch or a particularly talented witch. But my great grandma was the adept before me, then there was me, but my daughter and even my grandsons that I had by her also seemed to be adept as well. So I think something with the Rockefellers pissing around in our gene pool with the MKUltra has done something also to me besides their effort to make a better super soldier or assassin or whatever. They triggered something more to it besides, so there's quite a bit to it. I also, while I was learning martial arts, learned a lot about Taoist magic and along those lines. I have an affinity for it, so generally when I get there, I know a lot of the black belts, the Sifus, the Sigongs, with Hatsumi Masaki. I achieved up to about Shidoshi rank. Beyond that is Shihan and the Sokis and so on and that. But they get a rudimentary or the foundation's built, but the people that get up into mastery start getting into the really good stuff.
John, do you remember a master OK Kim?
Yes.
I trained under him.
Yeah.
He was the last person to ever give me a belt rank.
Yeah.
That was years ago.
When I was training most of my classes, I would go beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Now, sometimes I used a sash system. The beginner would have a white sash, the intermediate would have a green sash, and the advanced would have a black sash, and the masters had the red sashes. And then I would just kind of keep the ranking somewhere around there. But even then, I would have, white belts sparring black belts and that, because it was good for everybody to, I didn't want people getting used to any one thing. I hated to teach katas because I used to teach my students when they go to do tournaments and stuff like that. For a while, I got the chance to travel the world doing my martial arts. Now, I was also with MKUltra. I'd fix me up a passport. I'd go to Japan, or I'd go to Hong Kong, or I'd go to Turkey, or I'd go somewhere and, fight a tournament. And while I was there, I had somebody else that needed to be bumped off somewhere along the line or something like that, a little happy accident or something, while I was there. But I had used to teach my students when they went into tournaments and that. Well, you watch the guys as they work out. If you see them doing katas, give you a good example. There's one kind of a standard kata you see in a lot of Japanese opens. They'll do a series of outward blocks and punches. And at one point, shortly into their kata, you'll see the upward block. Their right hand comes up, and their left hand comes out in a reverse punch, and right after that, it follows up with a front or reverse front snap kick. And knowing that they had done this sequence or any of the number of sequences that you saw while they were doing their kata, hundreds of times or thousands of times, you get programmed, just like we got programmed, but we'd use the program against you. When you saw that, it's kind of like, okay, I would come into that, and having saw them do that, and knowing he did that hundreds of times, and people used to say it was like I was psychic, and it's like, yeah, I was, but that wasn't what I was using to beat that guy. I would come like with an overhand strike that I really had no intention of making contact with. Yeah, I'd slow it down. It wasn't one of those speedier ones. Remember, like you did with the fellow with the rubber knife flicking on the end of the nose. Yeah. It was none of that kind of speed involved. It was just an overhand strike, and he'd come up. I knew automatically, just before I even did that, I knew the very next move was going to be a reverse punch off the other fist, and then a reverse front snap kick. So what would happen is I'd come up and with the overhand strike, but instead of really making much contact, I just drop my elbow down to come down on his front and jam it, catch his foot, and take him down. It's over, just like that. I beat him with his own move. And I would teach that it was more than just a technique, but usually by the time the guy gets up to a black belt, he's kind of got the techniques down. But a master, he kind of beats his opponent before he even gets in the ring. I remember somebody was I was managing some convenience stores for Tops Markets here in New York a few years back. I was a store manager. And I had some of the toughest stores. I mean, some of them used to get robbed once a week, whether they needed it or not. And I remember a guy coming in one day, and he was going to rob the store. And now, tell me what technique I used to defeat this guy. While he's standing there and he's holding the gun, I look at him in the eye, and then I look over his left shoulder. And I kind of smile, just a little bit. Hold it back and look him back in the eye. And he goes to glance. What the hell was I looking at over my shoulder? And he goes to glance. The minute he goes to glance, my left hand, as I push his gun aside, because he was practically in my face with it, and with my right hand, the same as I'm moving, pushing the gun wide, so it, even if he does pull the trigger, it's not going to hit me or anybody else. The next hand went into his throat, the fingers into his throat, and down he goes. Now, did I use the parry and the strike, is that what defeated him? Or was it just a casual glance just over his shoulder, the beginning of a smile? But I would teach that we're not islands. Everything we do affects everything and everyone around us. When someone is talking to you, the flicker of an eyelash or the lack of a flicker of an eyelash can control the events around you. When you're talking to somebody, you're interrogating someone, and their eyelashes flicker. You know you had a response with them. There's something that came to mind that tells you something about them. If they're interrogating you and you're looking at them and you're not even blinking, that has an effect either on what they're thinking. If you flicker the eyelash, they think they got you. You can control what they're going to do. You know, that little flicker changes what happens next. Or the fact that you didn't flicker changes, it affects them, what happens next. And it was the same thing, glancing over the shoulder and just the beginning of the smile and catching it. Oops, didn't mean to smile. Mm-hmm. And whoa, what was that? Looking over my shoulder. All he's got to do is glance away from me for a second. And
that falls into
it doesn't matter if he's got the biggest handgun in the world. No. He's a dead man.
And that fits right in with the way we were taught. Strike when they blink. Strike when they blink.
Everything is a weapon, a blade of grass, or, they could, I get a kick out of these X-ray machines and metal detectors and all these courts and that. It's like, look, I could walk through that thing bare ass and still carry off my contract to everybody in the courtroom if I wanted. I could still probably hit 4 times in a second, each one capable of breaking bricks or bones. Okay, so, somebody's close enough, 4 people close enough to me to hit within the space of 1 second. The next minute is more than I need to kill several others, and not a single blip is going to happen in the X-ray machine or the metal detector. It has nothing to do with whether I'm armed or not. We are the weapons. If I got a blade of grass, it'd be just enough to be blown into your eye to make you blink long enough for me to snap your neck around the other way. That, like it says, everything we learn about even when we think about weapons, it's not just guns, it's not just knives, it's not just bazookas or law rockets or anything else. It's everything we are and everything around us.
That is so true. So true.
And then when you got that hardened skeleton and those extra dense muscles and everything like that, it's like, it's almost overkill. We're made to be eminently survivable. This is not luck, not, few things are left to chance. I said, I've been hit a few times. It wasn't enough to really stop me or even keep me from doing whatever I had to do the next day. That one time I got caught and tortured, man, I was a mess, but I still walked miles to get to the pickup point, afterwards. And I'm only beginning to understand how I killed all those other people. I only remember the first 2 when I got off of those bed springs. Sheesh, that was an awful time. Now there's this thing with the PTSD. There was a thing about the implanted memories. Implanted memories don't work great against something really severe that would normally give you PTSD. Because when you close your eyes, you still see those times. I mean, not every time, but when it comes up in your mind, it's there, it's vivid and clear because your adrenaline's pumping. It's like your voltage is turned up way high, and these things are burned into your brain, like onto your hard drive indelibly. They don't ever come off. And sometimes they put us in a chair and they try to give us these cover memories, and the cover memories would be good for a little while. They'd kind of work a little bit, but when you close your eyes and you'd have dreams or nightmares, you'd see the other thing. They'd tell you this happened, but you'd be seeing something else when you closed your eyes or you went to sleep, and they'd be pretty consistent. And it's kind of like, geez, that's how I got that scar there. this memory doesn't have anything about that star. It's unimportant as far as they were concerned. This memory explains, this memory kind of is one thing, but this explains why I'm scared to death of why it really unnerves me when electrical stuff gets used against me. Why I get creeped out about spiders and things like that. You find it, those images would be in there, and eventually, in spite of the chair, I hated the chair because I never knew what I was missing or what I was losing or anything from that. But eventually, I usually got those memories back, especially if there was something that happened during those times. Eventually, it kind of comes back if you start looking into it, and it's kind of like, it makes more sense.
Yeah, and it takes time too, and then you try to recess other memories to confirm it or deny it. You try to talk to other people to confirm it or deny it. You go back and you research old newspapers and whatnot to try to confirm it or deny it, and it's a long process. It's not like, oh, I woke up this morning and, oh, great, I have a fantastic memory. No, that's the way it was with Miranda and I. It would take us years to work on some memories before we would ever talk about it publicly.
Yeah, because some stuff is like, am I crazy or what? And
exactly.
For a long time, I mean, even as a kid, I'd go down to the shrinks there at Strong Hospital. They had a big psych, and these were the same bastards that was doing most of this stuff to me, but it's kind of like, but I'm thinking this, I'm doing that, is it, am I crazy or what? And they say, well, we want to talk to your parents, you're all right. And I kind of go back, and it's like, I was a pretty stable guy for one that they messed with. I mean, highly nervous or like high strung, but never so far out. The only thing, my big trigger was violence. If somebody did violence to me or did violence around me, I got into it. I was into it up to my eyebrows, but somebody had to do it first. I mean, we could sit here calling each other names or anything like that. That wasn't going to make me violent. You could disagree with me till the day goes round. It's not going to make me violent. The minute you balled your fist and cocked it, it's over.
Yep.
There was a couple times I got into trouble that way. I remember once there in Colorado Springs over there by Fort Carson. I think I was about 19. I was acting as a bodyguard for somebody up at we were at Broadmoor International. It's just west of the Colorado Springs there, just at like the foot of Cheyenne Mountain there. And I remember I was dressed a little too good to be out, but I was at the Broadmoor originally, and the jerk that I was working for was a real asshole. And he wanted me to take out somebody with my samurai sword because he had insulted his wife or something. It was something stupid. It wasn't nothing worth anybody dying for or making a show like that. It was very counterproductive. If the handlers knew at the time, they'd have been all over him, but he was just drunk and a real walking pecker, So I ended up just freaking leaving. I knocked him out with the butt of the sword. I just drew it real fast and put the butt up right under his chin, and back in the scabbard. It never completely left the scabbard. I just kind of bopped him with it, and I just walked away in disgust, and I start hitting the bars. But I was like 19, and all you could hit was these damn 3-2 bars. So I was drinking a lot of 3-2 beer, and I got to this little place on Pikes Peak Boulevard, a little GI go-go joint called the Honey Bucket. And I got this red velvet jacket and a silk shirt on underneath it, and I'm sitting at the bar of this GI dive, and these two dog faces on either side of me are talking about whether I'm queer or something. And I said, why don't we step outside and see if I hit you with my purse? And there was the two of them, and we went outside. And it's like, you want to talk about whether or not I'm gay or not or anything like that. I says, I'll bet you two are the biggest sissies I ever met. And we ended up getting into a fight. And it didn't take very long because I already had a chip on my shoulder. So anytime I hit him, I broke bones. I broke some ribs. I broke a couple arms and legs. Not mine, theirs. And while I had this one guy up against the side of the honey bucket, well, they had the glass front, the windows, but they were kind of painted over so you couldn't see the go-go girls on the inside because sometimes they'd be topless. But you could see the reflection is at night on the street. And I could see this guy coming up behind me, and he's got like a 2x4 or something raised over his head. He's going to hit me from behind. And I just stopped hitting the guy that I was hitting, wheeled around, punched this guy dead in his chest, sent him flying to the curb. And by that time, nobody was really in any condition to fight. And as I walked down the street, down Pikes Peak Avenue, and I kind of go up to a stop sign, and the next time you people want to mess with somebody, make sure can't do this, and I whacked the stop sign, just kind of folded it around my fist, and just kept going. Well, the next day I got arrested. Those guys ended up in the hospital, and the guy that I hit in the chest, he died. But evidently, we didn't know it at the time. It took a couple of weeks for this, but meanwhile I was sitting in the El Paso County Jail for a couple of days, scared to death I was going to have like manslaughter or something like that. My handlers are going nuts. Okay, the judges are going nuts. We don't want somebody like this out walking the streets that can do something like this. I don't want him walking on my streets and yada, yada, yada. And well, it turned out that the guy had a blood clot or something like that already around his heart. He had a heart condition to begin with. And the thing aggravated it, and there were plenty of witnesses. Look, it was 3 against 1. But as an ultra, you know, that don't mean that's play. You know, it wasn't right. I quit drinking after that, or quit drinking like that after that. I never had more than 1 or 2 after that. None of that crazy ass drinking anymore. But that scared the hell out of me.
Well, you were drinking 3-2 beer too. It sneaks up on you.
Yeah, I was drinking a lot of it too because I was trying to get shit faced. Because I was just pissed off from the whole. Just everything, you know, just like I say, one big chip on my shoulder. And of course, this is how they run you after that, you know, when, you know, well, take a lot of jobs in Mexico. And I didn't mind Mexico so much. I didn't have to go so far. And I could be back in a couple of weeks, you know, and doing my karate studios and stuff like that. And that was the thing I loved. And then from time to time, there'd be the tournaments here or there where somebody nasty needed to be off somewhere.
Kind of like to turn the conversation a little bit. We've talked a lot here about you guys' memories and training and background. Let's fast forward to today. Both of you have been, well, all 3 of you have been public now for a number of years. Miranda, quote, came out several years ago. Duncan's been in the public eye for what, about a decade, Duncan?
About that, yeah, a little longer.
And John, when did you first begin to disclose?
Only a couple of years ago, really. I had talked off and on. I don't really consider myself a whistleblower per se. I'm a victim, still seeking justice. I was seeking justice back in the 70s. Wasn't big in public about it. You talk, the more you talk about it, and people still think you're talking some conspiracy theory stuff. And it's like, look, I can show you, you know, these buildings, these programs, and that. This is a CIA building on a medical campus. It's still there. It's still operating. It's still doing the stuff that it did back then. It's like, well, I can't prove it. So, well, you can't either. Get in there, try to get in there, and they're going to give you some crap about national security. Now, what would they possibly be keeping from you off of a medical campus? You can't know about that security is such. It's what I'm telling you about. This is where I came up from.
Well, and you're correct.
When I was a kid, I was into the martial arts before anybody even heard of Bruce Lee. I started my serious martial arts training in 1963. Nobody even heard about Bruce then. And I said, well, where did you get it? How did you get trained? And I said, well, it's from this thing. And it's kind of like some super secret thing over on the medical campus. Yeah, like that's going to happen. And by the time the Freedom of Information Act come out, I got excited. Okay, here we go. Gotcha. Now you know where I got this from. Now you know why I'm the guy that can run up the wall into the second floor, why people have hit me with cars and it don't make no difference, why I've gotten into gang fights where I'm the guy that walks away and everybody else has got broken bones. You know, these are things that I've done my whole life or been around my whole life. And it's like, now you know why I have this particular level of skills. And it's like, well, they turn that into a circus and people are still so mind-controlled. It surprises me that these people around us, that the average American is more mind-controlled than we were.
That was actually, that was the conclusion that we came to after we did the interview with Miranda several years ago. I reached a point in that interview where I went, yeah, everybody pretty much is mind-controlled. In fact, the general populace is more mind-controlled than anybody that's been through a Black Ops project, in my opinion.
Yeah, because I didn't have a hard time killing people that were really, really bad people, where I could feel like, okay, this is definitely doing the world a favor. People will live safer around where these people were ruling. You know, it doesn't bother me. Won't lose a minute's sleep over it. No collateral damage or anything like that. I'm going after this person who's done this many murders already, and man, I can tell you some stories from some of the people that have taken out or had to deal with. And it's like, no, you wouldn't lose a minute's sleep over it. You might get a few nightmares of some of the things that you've seen that they were a part of, but that person is no longer alive to do those things anymore. And, you know, conscientiously, that's not an entirely bad feeling. But I kind of went into those things thinking it was good guys versus bad guys, but it was actually bad guys versus worse guys, and I was with the worst guys. You know, in the 80s or the 70s when I was doing, you know, Mexico and Central America, it was most of those drug cartels, you know, a lot of the coke lords and stuff like that. And I thought that those drugs were being burned and stuff after we left. But they were loading them up into black planes.
Yeah, they were flying them into Mena, Arkansas.
Yeah.
Among other points. And funding the Iran-Contra operations and various other CIA operations, and basically flooding the streets of America with a whole lot of...
So what I was doing is I'd be killing off the drug lords, and then the cleanup squads would come in, take the drugs, and sell them. And it's kind of like, we just took the drug lord, we just robbed the store is all. You know, and the biggest drug lord in the world, the United States CIA, took over the job for that. I was an enforcer for them.
Well, it's a really old...
Well, I like to think I was, but somebody'd move in afterwards, but that wasn't my trouble, or eventually I'd come in and get them too, or somebody would, make it so it wasn't easy to, have a lifetime of crime and murder and mayhem.
Well, this is a formula that was perfected, obviously, a century before via our British overlords and the Opium Wars. Mm-hmm. This is the exact same strategy. It's pretty true. There's nothing new under the sun. They just refine it.
Oh, yeah. Well, they refined it even before then. For a lot of my Native American friends, but before they got here to Turtle Island, they came to my island and did that same thing. Mm-hmm. Back in the day when the Vikings and the Saxons would raid, Ireland shores and that, all the clans would come together like separate fingers of one mighty fist and swat them right out of the sea. Or off the shore, generally the ones that survived would be enslaved for a few years to work off their war debt. And, when they worked that off, they could either, live in their village with everybody else, as everybody else, or go back home or whatever. That was the way of the Irish back in ancient times before anybody even came over here. But when the British royalty was, they were perfecting the divide and conquer, they come over, the Anglicans, and they would befriend some, befriend some of the clans, play them against the other clans, and they create so many divisions that when things started taking over. None of the clans would come together anymore. And then the British took over Ireland. The Romans couldn't even conquer the Celts or keep hold of them. They were over there, they had their buildings and stuff, but they were constantly fighting to try to stay there, and after a while, it was just too much. It wasn't worth it to try to stay over there and rule it. Eventually, they did it with their religion, the Holy Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Come in subtly, playing it not as warriors, because we're going to take your warriors down, but they come over as friends. Those pictures of those Thanksgiving feasts, sharing it with the Indians. Nobody, none of the kids in our school play. They're good friends. Yeah, we say goodbye to the Indians as they leave. Nobody's saying a word that they just gave them a shitload of blankets infected with smallpox.
Yeah. Yeah.
None of that gets said at all. You don't hear none of that anywhere unless you look it up for yourself. But it's what people are made to believe. The propaganda. It's like I did a video on YouTube about two-dimensional thinking. You're told, you're not taught in school. You're indoctrinated. You're taught that Columbus discovered America in 1492. And at the end of the year, when they give you the test, if they ask you who discovered America and when, if you answer anything but Columbus in 1492, you failed. You got a lower GPA and everything else. The people who can actually become the captains of industry, get all the best schooling in that, are the people that regurgitate that crap back verbatim. They are controlled by overlords over them. Knowledge is power, but when you have knowledge that isn't true knowledge, it becomes power against you. You believe in something that isn't so. Well, what you don't know doesn't hurt you. But the way I've been teaching people for ages is what they don't know is exactly what kills them. That with the ninjutsu, the clandestine operations, what you don't know, what you don't see, what you don't understand about what you're looking at is exactly what will kill you.
That's gonna actually lead us into somewhere else I want to go, because I originally asked all of you about your disclosures, knowing that Duncan had been out there for a number of years. You've been out there now for several years, and Miranda as well. But going public with this, having a public profile and being identified as somebody coming out of a project is obviously another level of painting a target to your back.
Big time.
And this gets into the more subtle aspects of disinformation and the various gangs that are prevalent on the internet, especially in forums, websites, and anywhere that people like yourself are attempting to put out information, including, I'm sure, Facebook as well. Share your experiences and your frustrations with what has been going on.
Well, my biggest frustration has been with handlers all along, straight off. The people on the net, most of them I can respond to. I can, you can say, well, Duncan was having they call them Luciferians and stuff like that, and it's kind of like, look, the people that did this to us were Luciferians, and it's not easy being one person, being a victim, and turning against a massive government or a massive cartel, criminal cartel, and being one against many. It takes a great deal of will. It takes a great deal of effort. It takes a great deal. We can't be Luciferians. We're anything but. We're rebelling against Luciferians, and it means our lives. The big things with me, a few years ago, I'm diabetic now, and I got some complications from the kind of life that I've lived. We found out that some of my vials of insulin had been tainted with snake venom. Man, I was bleeding out of my ears, my nose. I was crying pink tears, and other places that just not nice to mention. And before we found out that I'd already done almost a half a vial of insulin tainted with snake venom. can't stay in a job more than 5 years. Now, I am a very work ethic-based person, but generally, somewhere after, I'm there, 5 years, you start to get vested interest. That's when they start paying into your 401k and all this other kind of stuff. Eventually, somebody comes along and tells somebody, hey, this guy killed more guys than cancer? And or he's a Vietnam era veteran and he's killed a lot of people and he could snap any time. And if you talk to me, yes, I'm very opinionated about some things, very passionate about some things, but I've never killed anybody for disagreeing with me or anything. I can argue with you and I'll enjoy it. I'm that kind of Irish. I can be
I love it.
verbose or loquacious or eloquent when I have to.
I think we've all got that sitting here on this call tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you find yourself pounding the pavement again after 5 years looking for another job, and you got to start all over again. And in these last couple decades, every time I lost that job, I took a pay cut. So, as long as you're poor, it's like, who the hell wants to listen? Well, if you're so smart, why aren't you rich? It's kind of like, well, because I got scruples. I have an ethic to live to, and I'll live to it to the day I die. When I face my ancestors, I will be as a warrior, not just one that swings a piece of steel, one that stands for something, who's unbending, who doesn't give in. Right now I'm surviving. Surviving is what you do instead of dying or allowing yourself to be enslaved. I don't call what I'm doing right now living. The only way I'm living is when I'm putting out what I know about the system and waking up people as much as I can. When they get to the point where they can see it for themselves and then they start making decisions on their own to buck the system, then I've done a good thing. See, now that's living. That's a life that's actually producing something. But most of the time right now, I'm just living from day to day until I can get to a certain point where I can get a little more done. I'm already figured I've been living on borrowed time for some time. They tried to electrocute me at the last job I had at a radiation oncology clinic that I used to work at. I've been zapped, a couple strokes. I've been shot at before. Back in Mexico, when I finally decided that they were selling us out, they sent a couple spooks to lean on me, and I left them dead. With their ID and everything, and the Mexican government got, hey, man, what's these dead spooks doing? What are they doing operating in our borders? And, what's this about? And it's kind of like, it's not like they haven't tried. And it is more advantageous or cheaper for them to leave me the hell alone, and basically the things like they try to run on Duncan and the rest of us make it sound like crazy talk. But there are things that point to where we've been, what we've done. I could name names and give you institutions that I've been in and associated with. I can put them in those places at that time, and they may have their redacted documents where you can't prove that, and it's kind of like, but I can put them there at this time, and I'm a part of this program. And I can do this, and I can do that, and I have been in Rochester for a long time. I've beaten the snot out of a lot of bad guys. I caught my own bad guys when I was just a grocery store manager for Tops. How many of them do that? Put their own bad guys in the back of the cop cars and then prosecute them. For a while there, the DA gave me my own parking spot there. I've been in court in Rochester courts for being in gang fights where I was the other gang and the only guy that walked away from the altercation. The cops know me. I'm not a badass, a criminal, or a troublemaker, but it always knows where to find me. These days I try to stay as much off the grid as I can. I have a place that I'm staying, but most of the time I stay outside of it so I can watch it. I can see who's trying to come or what. And, I'm cagey enough and my record is high enough where basically the spooks pretty much leave me alone. About the time I get slack, I figure it'll be about the time they actually get me. But I'm sick enough where I don't think I'll really last too many more years this way. And I don't mind moving on. I've been across that line so many times. I'm looking forward to the time I cross it and stay on the other side. I got something to look forward to. I don't have anything to be afraid of. It has been an effort. It has been a trial. I can say, yes, it made my life a lot harder, a lot more difficult, opening my mouth and saying something. But to allow myself to just knuckle under and be like the sheeple and live under the tyranny and the threat and everything else like that, I can't allow that. I can't live that way. Back in the day, the Celts, the Norse, when you got old, you died with a sword in your hand. Now, this doesn't mean you necessarily had to go out and pick a fight with somebody and die like that. A lot of times when you're on your deathbed, if it was times of peace, your sword would be in a scabbard right at your hand or by your breast. Before you died, on your deathbed. If it's time of war, you died with it, a bear blade near your hand. I have one right next to my bed, and it is there because it's time of war as far as I'm concerned. But it is significant of a fighting spirit. When I go to face my ancestors, it'll be, I didn't cow. I didn't bend. I didn't say, oh, they're more than me. They got me outnumbered. They got me outgunned. I'm an ultra. I've been dealing with that my whole life for them, and you better believe I'm going to deal that way for me and for the things that I honestly believe in, not the creeps that have been deceiving me for so long. So, it is a problem. It is there are people that'll detract, but I have never charged a dime for my testimony or for the advice that I give. I'm writing a new book called Practical Witchery. It's available free right now. It's not completely finished. I still got a few more chapters I want to add to it on bookricks.com. I'm not charging for it. This is not something I'm doing for money. The money is in occult symbolism, and it only gives them power anyway.
That's right.
Every time a dollar changes hands, they get a piece of it. These people that try to live these good, quiet lives, look at, if you're working a regular day-to-day job, 1 day out of every 4 that you work gets paid in taxes. Where do those taxes go? They go to the Fed. Who's the Fed? It's a private bank owned by the 13 most powerful and luminous families in the world. That's who gains from it. That's whose slave you are. That's the thing. Go to work, get a job, buy a house, raise some kids. You're paying taxes. You're just creating more slaves for them. Every dime you make, they get a quarter of it. Every dollar you make, they get a quarter of it. It's slavery. And I've stepped past that. And yeah, they make it difficult. You're swimming against, and everybody looks at you like that, but somebody's got to stand. Duncan kind of inspired me that way. I start hearing of him back when I start actually saying something was, well, people were pointing him out because I had said something to friends and stuff like that, and they'd say, hey, there's this fellow named Duncan, and you got to hear what this guy's saying, and he's kind of like, he looks and he sounds a lot like you. And I didn't recognize the name at first. When I knew him as a kid, we were Bobby, Johnny, this, that, or sometimes it went by call signs if you were on an actual mission or a simulation of a mission. But I didn't recognize the name at first. But when I did catch one of his lectures or something in that, he started talking about visiting off with an uncle for the summer. It's like I knew exactly what he was talking about. I'm looking at that face. I can see those eyes. The eyes don't change much over the years. They might get a couple wrinkles about them, but the eyes, and then there's that Kentucky accent, and it's like, man, I know this guy. I know this guy like I know. And then he's doing things. He's doing martial arts moves. He says, well, I don't know where I learned them. And it's like, I know exactly where you learned them. Some of them, I didn't teach them absolutely everything because there's other people that teach. So you don't have no one single master or anything over you in that, but I taught them a great deal of that. And, and a lot of that I saw, there's moves he's done that's almost signature mine, but I got them from somebody else myself. But I understood exactly. And sometimes I was supposedly at an uncle's house for the summer too, except I knew that I wasn't. I knew where I was because if I didn't train others and make myself, let's say, pay for my keep, you might say. They always treated me as an asset. You got to earn your way, or earn your keep, so to speak. It's very expensive. We got a lot of money invested in you. Then they're basically going to use you for experiments after that if you don't prove profitable for them. So training others, I did a lot of training others when I wasn't taking regular missions or in trouble for one thing or another. I think I was in trouble for that little deal in Colorado Springs the time that we were doing it, that schoolyard deal there, trying to make up for it, staying out of trouble and low profile and all that kind of thing. But like I said, they make you regret. They try to push you into here or there. They'll send people to your job behind your back. The people that talk like that, I can't remember that fool's name, but I wouldn't say it. Wouldn't give him the honor of using his name. That only gives him fame he doesn't deserve. Doesn't merit.
We've got about a half dozen of them, but yeah. I said we've got about a half dozen names right now.
Take your pick.
well, there's certain kind of. You ever see a witch's pentagram? Now, a lot of people will tell you that it means, the four elements plus spirit, fire, water, air, earth, and spirit. But it also has another meaning for kind of a person, and a witch should be kind of five-pointed. Now, we all start out as 1 point anyway, a single soul, a dot on a piece of paper. All right, and a one-dimensional person, I think, therefore I am, cogito ergo sum,
right.
That he believes he's all there is. He is God as far as he's concerned. This is a guy that lives through life, and everything here is to please me in some way. It has to revolve me. I'm the princess that can change the light bulb by just holding on to the light bulb and the whole frickin' world revolving around me and screwing it in. That is a one-dimensional person. There's 1 point on a piece of paper. And some people go their entire life. Some people very rich stay that way their entire lives. He who has the most toys at the end of the game wins. Everything there is to gratify them. They are the god of their world. Then there's the two-dimensional, 2 points on that pentagram. These are the people that think, well, you're Republican or you're Democrat, you're right or you're left, you're conservative or you're liberal, you're gay or you're straight, you're white or you're non-white, or you're, everything's two-dimensional. You're one thing or the other, and anything in between those 2 points is a gray area. There's no red, purple, blue, ultraviolet, gamma, delta, whatever, or anything like that. It's black or it's white. It's one thing or it's the other. But then there's the three-dimensional people. Now, they're the people that think they live in a 3D world. And for some aspect, now all of these people are right to a small point. But if you look at the quantum physicists, there's as many as 10, if not 11. The 11th they call the M dimension, or for a mystery or even magic. So there's 11 real dimensions. They're not like separate places. The first is only one-dimensional. The second guy we talked about is only two-dimensional. And there's a three-dimensional. Length, breadth, height. All right? This is the person that understands solid objects and stuff like that. And he thinks the world is 3D. But it's not just 3D. It's something more. They do not perceive the other dimensions. They are invisible. Anything outside of the person that just thinks he's the only one is unknown. It doesn't exist. He can fool himself. Other people, they're just people I made up. They're not important. They don't have feelings. I can say or do anything I want. The two-dimensional guy, it's still not important about them as who they are. It's either one thing or it's another. They will fall into one slot or the other. And it's either good or bad, evil or, one thing or another. And it's still, he's got some of it right, but he still doesn't understand. There's still at least 9 more dimensions that he hasn't even considered yet. The three-dimensional guy forgets that there's a fourth dimension. The plane that you live in now is a 4D plane. Yeah, this is the 4-point guy. He understands that there's length, breadth, height, and time-space. miles per hour, light years, things that are measured, things move, you know. You can come to my house to meet me at a certain latitude, a certain length, a certain width, a certain longitude, in a certain elevation, 30 feet high, because I'm on the 3rd floor. But if you come there at 2 o'clock tomorrow, I'll be at the library. I won't be there, so you'll miss me. You'll have those 3 dimensions, but if you don't have the 4th, we don't meet. Okay? So these people pretty much great in this world. They understand how to get their ducks in a row. You know, this is the person that can shoot skeet because he knows that the clay pigeon is going to be in a certain place at a certain time, and he can intercept it. These people are great martial artists or a great number of things. But a witch, a mage, a person, a master of their domain is more 5-dimensional. They're the 5-pointed people. These are the people that when you feel somebody's eyes on the back of your head, you're not using those 5 dogmatic senses. It's something else that's cueing you the fact that that's happening. When you go to sleep and you dream about places that you've never been, and then you go there and find out that the place exists exactly as you dream. This is the 5th dimension. This is where you start. These individuals start to come, and they have intuitive functions. That's the 5-dimensional thing working. With each dimension that we add a greater degree of power and a greater degree of freedom and mobility to move. Now there's still beyond that 6 more dimensions to consider, but we got to evolve into them. This fella doing the little white hat thing, he's like 1, 2-dimensional at best. Maybe 3, but he's not considering any of the rest. It's as if it doesn't exist, but it does exist, whether he believes in it or not. You can argue him till the day is gone, but if he's one of those 1-point people, anybody outside of that point is invisible to him. If he's one of those 2-dimensional people, anybody off that sheet of paper that he's drawn on doesn't exist. They're questionable. Anything outside of it, well, I never seen this. It's kind of like, well, you can go to the building where I was processed in. You can look it up and find out that it's been a part of the Manhattan Project and still by the CIA to this day. And they have done human experimentation. I mean, horrid human experimentation there. It is documented. But I didn't see it. Well, you never saw a Siberian tiger, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, or that the pictures that you see are photoshopped. Yeah, but they will always have some reason why they can't believe it. They're not fully there. They're not fully cognizant of where they are and what they are. And that's one of the other meanings of that pentagram that we often see. That's the person it goes beyond those 5, but the person that's got those 5 now has some power in this world.
John, can I ask a question?
Accomplish great things. Or terrible things.
John, real quick, because I know Randy's got a follow-up. When you talk about a total of 11, that's the Elven star, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Some would stop at 10 and say that was a Sephiroth, like the Kabbalah. Yeah,
right.
It describes a great deal, but some physicists say as many as 11. I think there might be even more than that, personally. But we have to grasp all those others. We have to grasp our 5 first before those others become even remotely visible. You know, it's like when you're out on a 3-dimensional plane and you want to see what's going on beyond something beyond the hills, you have to climb up on top of a hill or at the top of a tree so you can see more of the area around you. You have to master those 3 dimensions, or you have to master these 5 before you get to these others as well. But the people that are in that little one spot, the 2-dimensional people, 2 and 3-dimensional people, are people usually religious people. It's either God or it's Satan. It's either right or it's wrong. It's either good or it's evil. Their knowledge of good and evil is, well, God said don't do this and that, but they don't know why. They don't know why that's evil. Well, because God said so. No, there's a reason why that's considered evil. Because it does awful things to people. It creates bad feelings. It puts them in a bad way. You create a bad way. You create the hell that you're worried about. And you create it for other people, so why don't you think it's going to come to you?
Perfect.
There's a fullness to it. The more dimensionality that you add to it. And those are the things that Jesus was warning people, but everybody made a religion out of it. Well, that kind of came about 300 years after that. But after him.
That's
about what happened. And these other mages and warlocks got together and they use this as a power base. We keep them in these dimensions, these 1 and 2 and 3 dimensions. The 3-dimensional one are the more spiritual types that almost kind of get it in church, you know? They understand that there's a little height in there, not just the length and the width. But the whole idea is to keep them onto this material plane and, you know, focused on goods and money. These are the things you need, and you got to get them for us. And then when you get them, you got to give them to us. Yeah, and this is where they're kind of focused too. That's why, you know, people talk about 33rd degree Masons like they're great, but to some mages and to some witches, 33 degrees is pretty much like barely junior high because they're so focused on this plane. It's like the physicists they're spending billions looking for the God particle, the one little particle, the smallest particle there is that everything else is created out of. But they're neglecting, they're not seeing the forest for the trees. It's not the particle. The substance of the universe is not matter because an atom is like 99.9999% empty space. It's not the matter. It's the consciousness. How do you think light-charged particles stay in one area instead of repelling out all over the place? There's a consciousness that holds them together and defines them. There's a consciousness that holds your body together and defines you. They say, well, you know, I don't know if I have a soul. And it's kind of like, well, you must not know if you've got a heart or a brain either because you are a soul. That's the part that leaves when your body becomes inert and sits in the pine box with the lily in its hand and starts breaking apart because you're no longer in it. Your consciousness or your awareness is no longer there. That one-dimensional person, he's a soul, but he's got an awareness only of himself, but nothing beyond himself. They've disconnected them by keeping them in the material plane. The people up in that 5-dimensional area, they understand that we're all connected. And their ability to understand what another person is thinking, what another person's feeling, or influencing how they think and how they feel is because they understand that we're connected. Even the atoms and the space between us connects us. That consciousness, that how much we can reach out and touch everyone and everything else around us.
Boy, you just nutshelled
just about. This is the level that I'm trying to get people to.
You just nutshelled pretty much everything I think the three of us and many other people have talked about with me for a number of years. I mean, that's the reason why I've been doing these interviews, is to get people out of being rooted in their sensories, in the 3-dimensional world of the money, power trip, and the consensus reality. Because really,
you know, more important things, vastly more important.
I've come to the conclusion, John, I'd rather be dead knowing the truth than alive being lied to at this point. And I get the sense that you've kind of reached that place yourself.
Dropping this body won't mean anything. I still will exist. My consciousness will still always exist. That energy cannot be destroyed.
Yes.
I can be either kept away from the whole because I've been isolated it from my whole existence, or I can rejoin it and, you know, kind of do the Yoda or Obi-Wan thing, type of things. There's things that are more important. There are values that are more important than gold, owning property, how many toys you can get, or how many creature comforts you can live with. That will, that word, that ability to stand and be the fighter. It doesn't mean we got to go out killing Iraqis or Iranians or anyone else. There's things that we can stand for. Our American values, who the hell are we kidding taking them to anybody else? We don't have any. We don't have any freedom. We don't have any liberty. Ask for permission to get out there and say what you want to say. See how hard you have to fight just to say something like Duncan, Miranda, or I, or any of the others have to. You know, the derision you get, all the things that go with it. You have to be strong to stand, but you have to be strong on the inside. I think that's what made us survive, that strength of spirit inside. It couldn't be broken. It can be fractured a little bit, back a little bit here and there. Like I say, all of us are kind of damaged goods to some extent, but we're all functional. And that's to the length or the degree that our strength of spirit is.
Yes, I agree with that totally.
Amen, John.
Yeah.
Dead on. Nicely said.
Yeah, it really all comes down to that, I think.
And the more we talk, the more we push, and this is, all four of us all right now, and what few others of us that are out there doing the same thing. And we wrote about it a couple of weeks ago. The more good we try to do, the more we're going to get hammered. And that's where that unyielding spirit has to come into play.
Right. Each of those spirits is a small piece of that consciousness, a small spark given free will. That consciousness, we call him the creator, we can call him God, capital G. There's all kinds of gods. I'm as pagan as the day is gone. I know many, many gods. We're talking small g, some smaller than others. But that big consciousness, we're a piece of that. Each one of us has a soul that's a piece of that, and it either goes back or it goes someplace else away. And every time we wake somebody up, say something that gets somebody sticking on their own, and they're no longer accepting the program, and they start making their own decisions and evolving as they should, going from that 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 dimensional plus. That's what we're destined to do, or what we're supposed to be doing in our natural state, growing as human beings or as spiritual beings. Now, God is not a cranky old white man. When he says that we're created in God's image, he doesn't mean that he's a cranky old white man sitting on a throne. He's a consciousness, just like we're a consciousness. We run this body. He runs the universe. He defines what those atoms are going to be, what kind of atoms they're going to be, the thing about the universe. And we're designed to kind of move up into that. We're part of him. That's what Jesus was talking about, us being his sons and daughters. We are that conscious. We should be growing. We shouldn't be stagnating here trying to live for a few bucks or anything like that. We should be becoming something more, something bigger, something more important. The thing that God wants is not anybody's dollars, which you can put in the offering plate for anything. That's for somebody that doesn't want a job working in a lumberyard or something. Yeah, he'd rather be up there being everybody's gathering respect because he's got a funny collar on or something like that, holding power over you, what you think and do and act, and that's his godhood, small g. Yeah, but what we should be becoming is something bigger and more concerned than that. Those are the things that are genuinely precious to God. His children, when his children come back to him of their own free will, they wake up and they say, "What have I been doing down here, slopping with the damn pigs? I should be, I should be influencing. Everybody influences their circle of friends to some extent. I should be an influence in my community for something better. I should be a force for good. I can do things. Me as an ultra, I know I can change anything I want to. Usually in a very destructive way, but I've learned how to do more in a constructive way. I learned how to use my words, use my thoughts, use my ideas, push people in a better direction when I can, just to try to wake them up a little. Now, a lot of our words just kind of go past people's ears like they're deaf, and they fall on deaf ears, and there's nothing you can do about that. But every once in a while, you hit one, and you say something, and it jars him awake. And he starts thinking, wait a minute. And he starts thinking for himself, and he starts growing. Now, that's my reward. I'm going to pass into eternity, and for everybody that I woke up, this is like a gem. This is like a jewel. This is like money in the bank. This is my leeway with family. I go to my ancestors' cloud. My head held high. I did my best. I got out there and I fought a really good fight. Good things happened because I was out there. I wasn't out there for hate or anything. I was out there for love. I protected my loved ones. I protected my siblings. I woke them up. I said, look, brother, this is dangerous. You need to be putting that down and looking up and seeing what's going on around you and doing something to not pay into that. Yeah, you shouldn't be a part of that. You're paying into it. You're a part of that gang. You're part doing those awful things. When you're paying for all those missiles they're killing all those Pakistanis and everybody with, and that's your money, and that's your representative doing that in your name. That's part of you. You wake up to it and you say, no, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to stand. I'm going to withstand. I'm going to stand against it. If you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. And that's what everybody's doing. It used to be give me liberty or give me death. Now it's give me ambiguity or give me something else. But that's our reward. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're living for. That we are connected. We are all related. We are all brothers and sisters. Some of us are big-ass ultras, and some of us are ultras that were throwaways. But everybody's important. Everybody's a soul. Everybody's a piece, spark of that consciousness, and needs to grow and can grow, and is capable of better and greater things, and becoming much bigger and greater than you can even imagine right now. And it's just one little step at a time, waking up, looking about, and starting to take note of things, and learning and growing. And that's kind of what we're looking for. That's why I'm going through this hellish lifestyle. I've done my time in hell. I'm right here now. Yeah, when I'm done, I got something better to look forward to. Everybody does. It's not something to be afraid. See, for that one-dimensional or that two-dimensional guy, anything outside of that is the unknown. They're afraid of it. I don't have any reason to be afraid of it. I'm connected to it. It's family that I'm looking to go to or ultimately end up with. When, if they put a bullet in me or I die of this disease and stuff that I'm going through, that's okay. It's not the end. It's just the end of my suffering here. But bigger things start from there. And that I'm looking forward to. Joyfully. If you told me I had a week to live, it's kind of like, good. I'm going to make this the best week I can for getting that word out and everything like that. So at the end of that, it's like, I'll be glad to drop this.
Well, John, that was beautiful. It was so profound, and I just, at this moment, I feel compelled to, whoever's listening to this, everything John Stormm has said is so crucial and so important and so deep with meaning, and there's a lot of information there, but I agree with everything he's saying, and I would encourage people to go back and listen again to catch everything, because this is just so monumental, and it's really uncanny to me how much you think like us. It makes sense, but I hear our words and thoughts and feelings coming out of your mouth, and I'm just totally blown away right now. So thank you so much for doing this.
You're very welcome. And like I say, as long as they're waking up, that's just more family. We're good brothers and sisters. We do the best by our siblings that we possibly can.
We can all get together and play some touch football after it's all over.
Tackle.
Oh, you're a real hard ass, aren't you?
Hey, we didn't get hurt. Those guys got a broken leg and a broken arm, but we just got a few bruises, and we were feeling pretty good about the whole thing, because those guys are getting rather rowdy with us about house browning and everything when we were kids.
We'll have to make new rules, like no magic, no glamour.
We've been known to cheat a little bit.
I have to say that this has been probably less of an interview than me having the privilege to sit in with two of my closest friends and a new friend, and somebody that, John, I've kind of watched from afar. I see your posts on Facebook, and I know about your work, and I'm privileged to be able to facilitate a conversation like this, because it's another entry in the data log that says, look, folks, wake up. This has been going on for a long time. It is an old story. It's an ancient war, and we want to break the circle this time, and we all would really like to resolve all these issues and not have to continue this wheel of karma that we've been on for lifetimes.
Yeah.
You get no argument on this side of the aisle. We're all tired, man.
Yeah.
Ready to go
I'm
home.
pretty sure we're kind of on the cusp of. I kind of hope, and I might even see it in my present lifetime. That I call this the golden age of warlocks. That this last this last couple thousand years has been. Because this is the time when they kind of came into power, and basically they control the paradigm and what the world sees or thinks they see and what they learn, and they're in control. They're the ones actually that's benefiting from all of the things the evil and everything that's going on in this world. And I'm looking for a new golden age, and I'm not the all sweetness and light, lovey-dovey, new agey type. Actually, I'm a very old agey type. I'm an old craft type witch. I'm looking forward to a golden age where we can, raise our families and, our children, and people can grow up to be what we were intended to be. Grow to the extent, because everybody's stunted. This paradigm, this whole corrupt system is stunting people's growth. You can't grow in this. As long as you're playing with that money and everything the way it is, until it all gets thrown down and corrected, and people taught in love and truth, without people being afraid. Don't let them learn too much. Yeah, let's keep them under their power. It's like I'm all about. I'll teach you, show you anything and everything. And the more you know, the more you grow. The knowledge is power. You should use it aright, because you should understand the basis. As I was even taught, everything you do, be it good or bad, comes back on you threefold. Some will say 30-fold, some will say 10-fold, some will say 100-fold. But either way, it's coming back with interest. So a wise witch, a wise one that gets up in the morning, looks for good things to do, not bad things to do. Throwing a curse is like throwing an anvil up in the air and standing under it and expecting something good. But it's like what America's been the last 60 years that I've seen. People vote for the lesser of two evils and then wonder why, geez, why is everything evil? And you don't even know if you got the lesser of two evils or just the better liar of the two. But it's evil, and it has to be stopped. You have to, no more. You have to stand up and say, no, down with it. Put it away. These precepts that we live, our Constitution, is a good one. You can use that as long as you're really doing it. Back in the day, they said we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights and all that. But these are the same guys that own black men and women. They didn't practice it for even hundreds of years after. Well, but, like the guy, like I said, my idea of a warlock's a man in an Armani suit standing with his fingers crossed behind his back. Well, this is what I said, but there's always a but. It's like the law applies to everybody or it applies to nobody. And it should be a law of love, not oppression.
Yeah. You've hit all the resonant nodes with me. And I think that's the top one. That's the one that we as humanity haven't learned yet, John.
Yeah.
The beginning of this interview kind of comes full circle now, because really when we began talking about MKUltra and mind control and all of these black operations and the abductions, we're talking about a society that still hasn't learned what love really is, because they think it's an emotion. But could you define love in a better way?
Sure. You ever hear that I get thumped with this from Christians a lot. Now, I'm not Christian myself, I believe in a great many things that are in there, but I don't believe in them in the religious sense.
I hear that in your speech, and I like it. We're kindred spirits in that regard.
Yeah. But it said there that one they like to thump us, and for God so loved the world that he had fuzzy, warm feelings for everybody. No, he didn't do that. For God so loved the world that he gave, right? He gave something that really hurt. But he sent Jesus. Jesus kind of made this example. Everybody said, he died for us. They took everything he did in his life and they boiled it down that he died for us. But what he did when he lived, what he said, what he taught, what he was showing everybody that we're all God's children. And yes, we can have grace. Grace is unmerited favor. God is not up there ready to swat. He wants you to get up and grow. The word sin in the New Testament in Greek is an archery term for missing the mark. When you sin, you don't kill the guy. When you shoot an arrow and you miss the archery target, you don't kill the guy for doing it. Or else he'll never be an archer. You adjust. He says, we acknowledge our sins. Yes, it's a little low and to the right. So you aim it a little higher and to the left, and the next time you get closer to the bullseye, and you become a better archer. This is what you're intended to do. This is what Jesus was teaching. This is what God was teaching. This is what, when you love the world, no greater love is anyone than this, and he would give his life for his friends. What do you think of a soldier who thinks he's fighting for liberty, or guys like us when we thought we were doing our country a service by killing its enemies? Yeah. It wasn't out of hate, it was out of love, it was out of protection. Every veteran signed their life away, gave the United States government a blank check for up to and including their life for what they believed in. However, nobody seems to understand what we believe in. How do we say we have these values? But black projects like MKUltra goes on, those things happen to American children. But everybody forgets that. Everybody loses that. Everybody pushes that under the carpet. Don't listen to those people. But we call ourselves a free country, this democracy, this constitutional republic, but we don't practice any of those things. For God so loved the world, or for you so loved your country, you gave. You do something for it. You stand up for its principles. You swore an oath to protect from all enemies, foreign and domestic, to stand up for those things. You love, you do something. It costs you. Not dollars and cents. Yeah, throw a couple bucks in the offering plate. No, you put yourself in that offering plate. That's love. That's what we're doing. That's what it costs me, even till the day I die. That's what it costs Duncan. It's a hardship. And you're going to get smacked. And it's going to be hard. And I remember as a kid, nobody ever came when we were screaming our guts out and strapped down on those things. Nobody ever came for us. Nobody knew. Nobody cared. And even when we told them back in the 70s and in the freedom, nobody, but we do anyway. Love is when you give of yourself to others. When others become more important or as important to you, because, see, I don't lose myself, I gain more. When I do it, I grow.
Wow.
In the likeness of our Father, our Creator, or an elder brother like Jesus, or Buddha, or Lao Tzu,
or Krishna,
a whole bunch of people that, they all were saying a lot of the same thing. It's kind of like, they'll kill each other. Right? So-and-so is the messenger. Krishna is the messenger. Jesus is the messenger. Muhammad is the messenger. Hey, didn't you get the message?
You think they would be getting tired of coming down here having to give the message over and over? People just need to get it.
Yeah. The part they got about the message was the collection plate. It's kind of, I did my part. Made the priest a little bit richer. We bought a bigger church.
He moved up from
got a whole lot of good.
The priest just moved up from a Cadillac to a Mercedes, so he's doing good.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything they want to question or they want to add to what has been an hour, 2.5 hour conversation? Which I've done very little of, by the way. I've enjoyed this. It was minimal effort for me, and I'm always in favor of that. So, but that's because
I don't want to say. And, John has just echoed so much of what the three of us have been talking about now. For years, and John and I go back a long ways, and we've both seen the good side and the rough side of each other. And I know this man extremely well. And when he says something, take it to the bank. He means it. And when he talks, it's from the heart.
Well, I've been, I thoroughly enjoyed this. It's been wonderful, John, to finally connect with you, with your voice, with your heart and your wisdom, and to meet another one of the others out there that we keep putting together. That's kind of what I sensed Duncan and Miranda have been doing. It's what I've been trying to do for years, is just find the other people out there. And I'm not just talking about MKUltra. I'm talking about the others out there, the disaffected, those who came into this world with a mark against them and have had to fight every step of the way to do what they were supposed to do this time around. And I really think that's the commonality of the message that, we're trying to get out.
Indeed.
Okay.
You got anything you want to say, baby, real quick? I want to make sure John has minutes when we're done.
Yeah, I'm just gobsmacked at the similarities, like we just keep talking about. I mean, the similarities between you two are uncanny, just the whole way through, and how he thinks, how you think, how I think, how Randy thinks. It just, I know we are different generations, but
we came through the same crucible.
We did, and it's very apparent to me, and I'm so moved to hear you speak and to finally hear somebody else talking about the things that just we are so upset about and trying to make a difference with. Like, they're still using children in these projects, and this upsets us to no end, and yet I'll be the crazy ones for trying to spread the word about this. It just gets all turned around, and so it's very gratifying to be able to hear you speak about this and say, yes, we stand with you on this completely, and it's nice to have you with us also.
And I think with that, we're going to close out the interview. I don't have superlatives left. As you just said, Miranda, I'm gobsmacked, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have been able to sit down and record this interview today with you, John Stormm, and with you, Duncan and Miranda. And I want to thank you for coming on to OffPlanet Radio.
It was a pleasure.
This is OffPlanet Radio.